Good morning, Exiles, and welcome to the Q&A portion of today after a very exciting reveal with lots and lots in it, exceeding my expectations, particularly in crafting. But on that note, we're joined here by Jonathan and Mark to talk about all that we've seen today and more in the future of Path of Exile too. And you had an update about the recombination.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so we actually last night had a bit of a design session and realized that we weren't actually fully happy with the way that recombination worked. So we actually made quite a big change to it, which wasn't reflected in that video, obviously, which is basically that we sort of wanted to give a bit more control to the player over how recombination works. And we also kind of weren't really happy about the fact that recombinators is something that kind of matters a lot for really, really ultra endgame players, but it wasn't something that was really mattering a lot for the people who effectively got access to the feature at the start. So we've actually changed it now so that the way it works is that you pick which mods you want on the each item. From each item, and then it gives you a percentage chance of success based on the number you picked. So if you pick just one from one and one from the other, then the chance is much higher. But if you pick if you pick 6 mods, it'll become practically impossible. So effectively, the more you're wanting to design the item, the less of a chance of actually having success. So that means that if you just want to get a mod, if you want to get an item with okay, these 2 mods that I found off the ground, that's relatively easy. If you want to get an item which has all of them, then very hard. So we think that's a much better design because it means you can kind of use the recombinators actually become something that you can use even from from the first point you get them. But there's still this kind of end game, for perfect stuff, you might still be able to do it with more. It is kind of balanced though, so that if you pick literally all 6, then it's going to be incredibly low to the point of don't even try that. But 4 mods might be a good thing to sort of be striving for, that kind of thing, and then exalt the other 2, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the new design of that. So hopefully that'll be in by the time 0.2 comes out. We've kind of got a plan for doing that. Yeah, I think it's a much better design than what we had before for recombinators.
If it's not there for 0.2, it'll be as soon as it can afterwards. But yeah, spur of the moment, night before the live stream design sessions. But increased player agency and visibility into the success result is just a win. And honestly, took way too long to get to the point of us actually going, this is just straight up better to have observability into that and the freedom of choice. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Recombination definitely felt like something that was both really high end in terms of the crafting that it was intended for, but also just even understanding it. This seems much more intuitive because
you just pick what you want.
The mods you want. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it does sound like it's a little bit of a nerf for the very high end of crafting, though.
It might end up being, but I'm not it sort of depends on how the numbers come out. Because we only just designed this, we need to still work out exactly how the numbers end up looking. But I mean, look, we have to make sure. Obviously, whenever we're designing any crafting system, we have to be really sure that we're not screwing over finding stuff on the ground. So you have to sort of have that balance, and that's so that kind of informs everything we do with crafting usually.
One difference here, though, of course, is if the success chance fails, both items are destroyed as opposed to always keeping one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's basically percent chance for success, and if it fails, item's gone. So
roughly, what do you think you try to pitch just choosing 2 mods at?
It depends on what mods you're selecting, but I'm kind of thinking 35%-ish kind of thing for 2 normal mods, that kind of thing. For them both. For if you pick 2, and then but we'll
it kind of depends. Again,
it kind of depends. We'll see how
higher tier mods are rarer. And
yeah, exactly. So it sort of depends.
The other thing is it's going to now have a fixed cost, so it's not going to
And the idea is doing a single expedition should be enough to do a recombination. So you're going to be doing them relatively often as you're doing expeditions.
So is the part of expedition where you get to craft with the NPCs still a thing then? Now that you're adding this?
Yeah, yes. I mean you've still got that whole mechanic, and so it's competing for the artifacts.
Yeah.
Between recombination versus buying things from that other way.
So is there some buffs intended for that then to make it more competitive?
Not yet. It definitely needs some love in the future, but not at this time.
Yeah. It seems like the systems can kind of go hand in hand, where one is giving you items that you can then potentially recombinate.
That is also true. You can use the ingredients of one in the other, or the outcome of one as an ingredient in another,
Cool. We'll talk more about crafting a little bit later on for sure, because there was a lot announced there, which I'm quite excited about. Definitely exceeded my predictions for what you'd be adding in terms of crafting. But firstly, though, just a quick clarification on the league. So there's not going to be a wipe for the new players joining us. If you were playing on a character, you can still keep playing on a character. But a lot of long-term Path of Exile players know the importance of playing on a fresh start, and that's also really important for you guys as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, basically, if we don't have like any character that's come from before, you're just not gonna because the balance is so different and because so many things have changed, there's like no point in even listening to feedback for someone who's playing in the old league. Like, it really has to be that you're doing the fresh start, and we're sort of seeing how things go in the new economy. So like, we were really sort of, it was kind of an interesting decision about whether or not we should make it so that all the content is exclusive, or rather like what amount of content would be exclusive to the league versus not. And the issue that we had is that so I mean, like, a league means something in Path of Exile. In order for something to rise to the level of a league, it needs like a certain amount of features. And the original thing we were thinking about doing that way would be the Asymmetry and Wisps, but there wasn't quite like the kind of like meta mechanics and stuff with that. So like, we didn't quite rise to the level of feeling like it deserved to be a challenge league. And at the same time, we've also got a lot of new players playing Path of Exile 2, never played Path of Exile before. So we were a little bit we kind of were deciding like, okay, should we make them exclusive or not? We sort of decided, you know what, for this one we're not going to. And then what we'll probably try and do is for the next league that we do, we'll actually make it a proper challenge league with like its own exclusive mechanic and so on. But yeah, it's a little bit funny because like in early access is a bit of a different situation, and so. Yeah, we'll sort of see how this goes anyway. But certainly I would encourage everyone just like start again on a new character. I think, you'll have a much better time because, obviously if there's structural changes to the passive tree. It's like if you log in with your old character, you're going to have like, your tree's going to get reset. You have to do stuff. There's things like that are going to happen that mean that, and also just balance changes, right? Like huge numbers of them. So you're going to have a better time playing from the start.
That's it. And speaking of the Huntress then, so we saw initial Huntress quite some time ago now and had some hands-on time with it and things, but I certainly, having played that before and played it now recently, the Huntress has changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
So what was the, how hard was it to get it ready for release? What was kind of the key there?
I mean, it's funny because class design is one of those things where every time you add something, it can make you reevaluate everything else, which is why it's so hard to predict like how long a class will take. So like, it changed a lot since the last time we had we were showing Huntress. And honestly, like, it's like, while there are some skills that you will still see, like, it just plays completely different. And I mean, whenever we're looking at like how we're going to design something like this, it really comes down to like, what is it's the special about the character class? Like, how can we double down on that to make sure it feels different? So with the Huntress, you've obviously got spears as a base type. The key difference between a spear and any other weapon type is that you can both use them at melee and you can also use them at range. You can throw them. And so because of that, we really were just really trying to incentivize everything possible so that you use both of those things. Action RPG players, they generally speaking, the balance can often be such that you only really want to do one thing and do that one thing well. So trying to incentivize the kind of ranged and melee is, quite a thing. And I mean, the way we do it effectively is try to make sure that like there are combo chains where, a ranged thing can combo with something that's melee and a melee thing can combo with something that's ranged, and then also give you good abilities to move between the two states. And so that kind of means that you end up with a very like agile character, like you're constantly moving like backwards and forwards and kind of moving around. And I would say that like, given that it's the Dex character, that it's good that it feels that way, that it feels the most agile of all of the melee character classes. That's been a really good one. But I mean, look, there are, in terms of changes, I mean, look, there are just changes all the time. Like the frenzy charge thing was like relatively late in development. Like there's like quite a lot of things going on that just meant that the field kept on evolving. And another big one, of course, was Parry, which I honestly was very skeptical of working. And Mark, Mark was the one who saved it. Honestly, like I was like, you know what? There was like 3 times I think where I was like, you know what? I don't think it's gonna work. And then you were like, okay, I think we're gonna save this.
I was like, give me a week.
Yeah, exactly. And it works completely differently for most games, because in most games, obviously, with parrying, the way that works is that you have to time the to push the block button at exactly the right time, but that's just something that just wouldn't work in our combat system because you're often packs of monsters. It's just like you don't really have the ability to read combat in that way in our game, and at the same time we need to make something where there's going to be like if a single monster in a pack hits you, you need to be able to respond to that with something that's going to you need to be able to respond in a way where you don't just then immediately get hit by a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
So having it so that the parry, like it always parries, but it's then taking advantage of what the parry does to the monster by following up with something that's going to give you like an explosion or something like that to kind of deal with the pack. That's something that sort of allows that counter gameplay to work in our game. So you've kind of got two primary parry follow-ups. You've got the frenzy charge one, which dashes back, which means that you don't have to worry about the monsters hitting you. And then you've also got the one that there's another one which I don't believe we showed there, which called Fangs of Frost, which does a counter where you attack with ice, which freezes the pack. So it's another way to so in both cases you've kind of got something that's kind of dealing with the fact that you've got all these monsters around you, and that was kind of the biggest challenge I think that we had with that mechanic.
I'll also make note of there was a support gem I found that you can attach to any attack that allows you to follow up parry to generate a frenzy charge too. So it doesn't even have to be the backflip.
In that case, there's
create your own parry.
And then of course there's always Sniper's Mark. And there's there's a skill that does give you a guaranteed crit, so that's a potential option as well. Like you've got a few different ways to generate them.
Because parry guarantees a light stun. You always get that small window to actually engage or do a thing before before you're under danger again.
And I'll tell you this, like, I am one of those players who never parry, right? In any game ever, because I can never do it. It's always just so frustrating. So I was very skeptical of that, but it feels really good. You've both managed to make it something that's easy to do because you can just hold the button down and parry at any time. There's no skill involved in that. But at the same time, you've incentivized making it so that you do want to still try and time it as best you can personally how have you done that? How have you made it so that like you actually still want to kind of play it skillfully?
Well, I mean, ultimately, anytime you're holding down the parry button is when you're not attacking, right?
Exactly.
So you still want to kind of minimize the window, but at the same time, like the timing is just not like, not as bad. But the nice thing as well is that like once you do successfully parry, it's very obvious. You get the sound, you get the token on the monster. It's very chunky.
Yeah.
So it means it's very obvious when you're supposed to counterattack. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think that it came out really well. And honestly, one of the funny things about it is that it immediately made me realize like how bad shields are in comparison, which is why we're also trying to ninja in a change to how shields work at the last minute, which we'll see if it makes it into 0-2-0. I was playing around with it last night.
This was 8 p.m. last night.
Yeah, 8 p.m. last night, exactly. I was
messing with this.
Yeah, messing around with it. And I won't talk too much about how that's going to work, but effectively we want to make shields, the shields better as well, and kind of build something into those to make them more interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the plan there. We'll see if it makes it for 0-2-0.
Yeah, following that kind of similar design space idea of being able to do a bit more with it.
Yeah,
and then
100%.
that feed into other skills and things like that as well. 100%. There's a lot of room there to play with.
Yeah.
So we talked about Huntress being very, very combo heavy, and she has the deepest combo chains out of anyone so far, even exceeding like things you can do with Monk. You got 3-4 different skills deep of things you can start to synergize together. So how do you balance? How do you make that fun? Firstly, like rather than like onerous, for example.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a few things. Like one of them is it just has to be very readable and understandable when, like what you can do and when you can do it. And I think the other thing that's really to our advantage here is reusing skills in multiple ways, so you can make a deeper combo chain without requiring you to be using as many skills in order to do it. So the way that Whirling Slash and Tornadoes interact with ground effects and kind of like all that stuff sort of means that you're using Whirling Slash multiple times as part of the same combo chain. And that's an idea I think that I'd like to try and explore more, because I think that it is a cool way to kind of extend the combo chain. Yeah, as I said, without sort of getting too many things involved, and makes it a lot cooler. So yeah, I'll think a bit more about how we can apply that to other classes and other skills. But it's worked out really well here.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a loose create your own combo system in a way. Like obviously there's intended combos, but because it's interacting with something that's fundamental like ground effects, you're able to combo with anything that creates a ground effect. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like I added shocked ground to the backflip skill, or I got a companion pet that had a shocked ground aura.
Nice.
As like, so that was just there, and that was available all the time.
I mean, it's funny as well because it also works on just enemy ground effects, and so sometimes you can just get a damage boost because the rare just happened to be dropping ground fire or something. So that's kind of fun. Yeah. But it's been it's just a lot of fun to play. You know, the first time I ran into that was actually in the graveyard where there's these like chests that like pop open with fire, and like I was using tornadoes, and then one of them just randomly turned into a fire tornado, and I'm like, oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, sweet. It was just like a really cool moment where it just sort of interacted with the environment, which was really fun.
It always feels like you're getting a little bit of something extra for free when you're taking advantage of the enemy effects, or a boss fight that just has burning ground everywhere. It's like, sweet. So how do you go about balancing, though, when you have a class that has deeper combos and kind of somewhat requires you to do a bit more versus a class or a skill or a build that is just bonk?
I mean, you have to ultimately make the combos matter, right? And I think actually that's one of those things that we're trying to really focus on with the balance changes we're doing in Dawn of the Hunt more generally, is making sure that even, like, I think it's the case where some of the combo gameplay kind of degenerates a little bit by endgame in a way that, like, I want to make sure it still feels rewarded. And so we were sort of doing various checks, recently about, like as a random example, right? Like, so on the mercenary, we found that doing, but when you get to endgame, doing armor break, what's it called? The armor piercing that causes armor break, followed with high velocity rounds, is just worse than just using high velocity rounds. And that's like really bad, right? Like we have to make sure that we're improving that stuff. So it's like sometimes you just get these things where like the balance by endgame kind of degenerates in a way that that doesn't support the combo anymore. And so we have to make sure that when we're looking at buffing things, that we're like making sure that when we're doing it, it's to support the fact that using more things is actually a good thing. We're really trying to make sure that we're bringing some of that, improving some of that stuff as well as we're making the balance changes.
So do you have like a baseline there of where like the really simplest build should be, the build that just bonks? Like,
I mean, you mean in terms of damage or in terms of like what it does? You know, I mean, we always want you to be able to build that way. But
players have to do a combo.
I mean,
for people who don't want
ultimately
to.
You never have to, right? But it sort of what it means is that you are sacrificing something. And look, the ideal situation is that like you don't feel like you have to do combos. You feel like you want to do combos, right? Like, because you feel rewarded for them. It's like should feel like a fun, like, oh, I can add this. You know, like it's the feeling you should be getting.
Yeah. I think the Huntress is doing that very well. It must have been like extremely hard, because I don't think I've ever seen this like ranged melee combo done well before.
Right. Well, I mean, it does require a lot of discipline, and it means that a lot of skills like end up on the cutting room floor because you try them out and then you realize, well, if this is in the game, then that's the only thing I'm ever going to do. So you got to be really careful about that stuff.
Certainly, playing the Huntress now makes me go back and look at the other classes and be like, we need to up that the level there, and we missed the mark a little bit now because this is better. And who's to say the next class won't even be better and make us question even this? But you know,
but that's the way it is with class design.
That's what he says when we like literally when you make a new class, you question everything. He's not understating the level of questioning everything.
Yeah. Do you see like going back to the monk at some point and looking for more like opportunities to link skills together with?
I mean, we haven't got to the full skill set for any class yet already, and we need to add more pieces for a lot.
I think there's at least 4 skills that were designed and then aren't in the monk currently.
Range are the same. There was extra poison skills. It was intended to be more chaos dots. All kinds of stuff. We have to obviously at some point fill all of that in. Hard to say when, but. We're going to try and incrementally get it, like much like how Ray Spectre and I mean the mount works with the Huntress, but we were like, let's give something for the Ranger this time. Let's give something for the summoners out there this time, and so we're just going to keep filling in those gaps over time.
And it feels like you're getting better at class and skill design as you go too. So I imagine the last class you're going to release is going to be like amazing. You'll look back at the first ones and be like, ooh.
Possibly.
Well, that is the worry, but whatever.
But look, that just means we've got another round of going through everything and improving stuff again, right? So
and that will never end.
That's it. So with the parry came the kind of looking at the player getting stunned, in particular player heavy stun. So it's always hard to tell players like, hey, we're going to do something to you and it's going to be a bad thing. You're not going to like this.
Well, the funny thing,
let's talk about why.
there's a few things like that actually, because so I mean, for a start, like we needed the downside of parry to be like that. Yeah, you get stunned out of it. But then when we're looking at how long, like we're like, okay, right now, and it's this true with shield block as well, by the way. It's like if you get stunned out of that, the amount of time that you get stunned out for is actually not even enough time for most bosses to do a follow-up attack on you. And it's like, well, where's the downside if it doesn't even have enough time? So we did have to extend that out a little bit, and it makes you a little bit more careful. But just to warn people, right, there's a few other things, like we lowered, what's it called? I can't remember the name of that thing now, the thing that makes you more easy to be elemental statuses apply to you. ailment threshold. That's right, ailment threshold. Yeah. So we lowered ailment threshold to actually make it so the player has those mechanics happen more to them, right? Because like right now through campaign, like you barely get frozen or burning or shocked, really, to be honest. Yeah. So there's stuff like that we've had to do to kind of make sure that that because if you don't have that stuff actually happen to you, then there's no point in mitigating it. And it's like things like charms were like not very useful because those mechanics weren't happening to you. There's stuff like that, right? The downsides do actually matter in order to make it so that that you then there's other things you can do to sort of bypass those downsides. So that's kind of one of those things that we just have to make sure is there.
I did always find it a little bit strange that like I was able to count the number of times I was frozen in the campaign on one finger.
For sure. for sure. But
it's always by those vile ghosts.
yes.
So expect a little bit more, a little bit more danger from the stun. I definitely died a couple times to getting heavy stun.
Yeah, it can happen.
So that's mostly occurring if you're like doing bad blocking or parrying. But can it also occur just from like taking a really big hit or something?
Nope. So, at least we've discussed that. We've gone through a whole bunch of different should certain boss abilities heavy stun you, and if you spec into enough stun threshold, it like demotes it to a light stun, and if that, there's all kinds of multi-hour discussions we've had, and we haven't really come to anything conclusive there. But it's only from mount, raise shield, and parry, and of which, at least for all of them, you can see your stagger bar filling up. It's worth noting things like evasion apply to. So when you're parrying, we turn off your evasion from taking damage because the block does, right? And otherwise you'd be like, I'm going to parry it. Oh, I evaded it. It didn't parry. Yeah. But you can evade the stagger build-up, so you don't take the damage anyway, just before anyone misunderstands that.
The evasion still works.
Yeah.
So high evasion will mean you can parry for longer. There's a bunch of parry stuff on the tree, including damage affecting the debuff, the duration of the debuff, so you get to benefit for it longer. Reducing stagger is all over the place for both mount and so in the dex section of the tree. So yeah, you can mitigate. I mean, my expectation is probably you'll get some endgame builds that are just like, I can parry forever and there's no real consequence. So not every skill can be parried, of course.
It otherwise follows the slam rules. If it's a slam from above or below, you can't parry it. Much to your frustration for some things.
I mean, there are a few things where I've got disagreements about what looks like it's parryable, but...
my hopeful there was when it's contentious, people would bring it up and would change it, right?
Sure.
So, like, if it's on the line, it's meant to be blockable. Like, if it isn't clear. And there was no way with hundreds of monsters and many dozens of bosses that we weren't going to miss some things, so...
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but action RPGs kind of naturally pull you towards one damage type, one skill, one specific thing, and optimizing as much as possible, because otherwise you're just making a bad build a lot of the time. But I noticed Huntress has a bit of everything. She's got bleed, she's got all the elements, she's got physical. The only thing she doesn't have is like chaos, but there's kind of poison on the tree right there. So how do you like promote this, like all of this different stuff together? Are you supposed to only kind of be relegated to using 2 or 3 skills, or are these supposed to come together, and how do you manage that?
Well, there's a few things. So one of them is that we provide a lot of combos with the expectation that you'll probably be focusing around like a few specific things rather than necessarily using the whole tree. So like there's that. The other thing as well is just making sure that in the passive tree there's sort of options that go across both. So the Huntress's passive tree has quite a lot of things like extra melee damage if you've done a ranged attack recently, and then it's got things like bonuses against blinded enemies because while you're in a whirling slash there's so it's sort of stuff like that where we're trying to carefully think like, well, how can we come up with something that's interesting and buffs everything that you might want to be doing, that kind of synergizes with the stuff that that Huntress can do. But it is honestly hard because like many categories of things only matter for one thing, part of a combo. So it's just like trying to come up with categories that can somehow span all of them in different ways. And ideally we can achieve that, but yeah, it is pretty hard.
Generally, you're going to become more niche or more selective because again, even mixing elemental and bleed is just probably often going to result
you
in
probably wouldn't do both elemental and bleed. You'd probably choose one or the other. But that's why we kind of try to make sure that, like, so you've got sort of linkages between them though, right? Because it's like, for example, the thunderous leap detonates the spears that you do from the bleed thing. So it's like kind of like the idea there is to like it changes how that skill then has a use in the combo with the other one. So even if that skill itself isn't doing a lot of damage, it's triggering something that's taking advantage of all the damage bonuses you got for the for your bleed stuff. So that's kind of like the idea is just to link all that stuff in a bit so that you can use the non like directly synergistic things in a kind of more synergistic way.
Yeah, that's if you didn't see that from the earlier trailer, it's you spear them with a bunch of spears and then jump on them and explodes them for being amazing. So, but yeah, that's using an elemental skill like in another way as detonator. But and even more, you've got weapon swaps as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's all those systems we already added about all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I mean, like, what will be interesting is whether or not we miss something cross-class, right? That's always a concern. Is someone will come up with some way to abuse something, between something that's going on in the spear skills with some other class that we failed to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so that's it. When we look at a new class, we typically like call it like, Huntress is spears, but kind of not really. It's a signature weapon, but
absolutely
nothing in the ascendancies prescribes spears.
Exactly. So effectively, we take great pains to make sure that the ascendancies never mention weapon types, that they're always generalized. So for example, the like infusion mechanic in the Amazon, it just says projectiles, it doesn't say spears, and the reason it does that is so that you could make an Amazon who is a bow user, and that's all fine. So like it's effectively like
open-ended.
It's open-ended, and honestly, like I know that Mark does like. It makes the constraint a lot harder for how to design an ascendancy class when you have to think about it that way, for sure.
Oh, it'd be much easier to just put a bunch of cool spear stuff in there, but now only really... I mean, it was similar to the original Parry 1 Saboteur. It called out traps and mines, and so if you're a trap and mine character, what are you doing? Well, you could do something else, but no one else is playing that thing,
Right.
It isn't... it is easier to design. It is certainly less flexible and open as to what people can play in the different combinations and all that, so yeah.
How much do you have to consider the different weapons and the skills and how they interact together when you're originally designing them, or is there just literally so many possible combinations you're just like, the players will take care of that for us?
I mean, I think it is relatively impossible to come up with everything, but certainly we have to consider, like, is this going to be broken with anything else in particular? And there just has to be certain rules for things about, like, how easy is it to apply this debuff, how easy it is to consume this debuff. And even then, it's like, we often make mistakes and have issues. I mean...
When he says relatively impossible, it is actually impossible. Actually.
But... I mean,
that's relative.
But even just looking at the balance pass we're doing at the moment, right? I mean, there's hundreds of things like that, that we still. I mean, there's things that we could never honestly understand all of the different broken things that could possibly exist, and so it's like it really does depend a lot on like on seeing reports and what people are doing on some level, right? But then I think that what will happen over time is that obviously, like, the game's still relatively new. We're still making relatively big changes. Over time, the balance, I think, will get to the point where we no longer have these like crazy outliers to the same extent. And it should mean that we get to some sort of relative class parity. By parity, what I mean is like, people playing all the different classes rather than focusing only on a few as we get towards full release. Because, right now it's obviously very skewed. Because there's certain broken things, so the balance over time we'll get there.
It's one of the main goals and benefits of the early access is just like let's get the balance of characters right. And this patch release was always going to have 1,000 problems, or probably 10,000 problems. The next one will have half that, the next one half that, and probably eventually it's going to be down to like here's only a few things going out of whack. There's always going to be something. Because we add too much content for it to even be controlled. Again, there are too many uniques, too many supports, too many skills, and too many other changes for any amount of people. Like you're talking about a matter of you'd have to put in like thousands and thousands of hours internally to find it and then you give it to the players. There's so many people, it's going to take literally 5 minutes. So it's very beneficial. We're lucky in that regard that we get to that level of testing and feedback and on such a mass level, and especially, with things like, Ninja and all of that, and other people being able to see it and discuss it more openly, we're just going to be able to iterate on it even faster. But yeah, every single patch, you're going to see a pretty substantial change in what's going to happen here. Yeah.
Thanks for making the broken builds. And
well, 100%.
I mean, you mentioned support gems. It's like over 100 support gems added just this patch. It's already like so many, and with you doing a different weapon for each of the 16 classes.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot by the time we're done. But there kind of has to be, right? Because
that's what you made it. You made this system that you need so many supports to support.
You do.
Because otherwise, it's not going to work. Like especially with this one support system, it's like What have you guys done?
Well, I mean, look, this is why we have recommendations, and hopefully we can improve those as well, and continue to get that better.
There's certainly room for the complexity to get a little bit out of control here. So the recommendeds are going to become more and more important.
Right.
So we need to make sure those are very much right.
For sure.
You must be looking to players even to find some of those recommendations down the line as well.
In some cases.
What stuff is popularly getting
used.
But
the thing with the recommendations, though, is that they can't really take into account what you've already got on the gem. So the recommendations have to be just sort of generally good, but not really take into account combos. That kind of means they're a bit more simple. Like the recommendations are going to be more simple than what you'd otherwise be doing if you're not following them.
Feels like at some point you're going to need some sort of nested recommendation system. It's like, well, I'm kind of doing bleed stuff, so you go to the sub-menu for bleed recommendations.
I'm less certain about that, because I kind of don't want to get into the thing of actually telling you what your build should be. That's a little different there.
Maybe like more sorting methods for the show me all the gems. Oh, because there's a lot that are only in there that are never recommended, right? At this point,
there are, yes, there are.
It's going to be an interesting challenge you guys have set yourselves to make enough supports there. So another thing that you managed to challenge that you set yourselves, and I always wonder, like, why did you do this to yourselves, was Spectres. So originally those were planned to be in for launch, but obviously Spectres are a whole can of worms. It's, hey, let's just give players access to every monster. Also, we've made so many new monsters.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the broken. There's going to be some broken in there, I promise you. And there's going to be some stuff we have to change.
I mean, they've done, but I mean, effectively, what the time between early access and this was like, okay, let's actually attempt at least to do a balance pass of this and like see if there's anything that's going to be a problem, and then adjust numbers accordingly.
But now you've got to account all those support gems on all those monsters.
Yes, well, this is an interesting thing, isn't it? The support gems work. The support gems work on them, and like, what the hell is that going to do? Like, it's impossible to completely know. But yeah, like, look, I mean, there's probably definitely some dark secrets lying in what kind of Spectre mixed with support gems are going to do.
And monsters have skills now. It's not like PoE1 where it's like just a bunch of zombies just doing default attack. It's like everything pretty much has a skill now at this point. So,
but the great thing about it is we got to leverage all that work again for the beast taming as well. So and of course the difference there is that you also get the mods from the thing that you tamed. So that's going to be
auras, ground effects.
Yeah, exactly.
Spawn death explosions.
No, you've got a whole nother ruckus of potential interactions. So we'll see what happens there.
We've done nice specific player versions of those things for which specifically when you tame the beast, so that they're not sitting there spamming skills in your hideout and all of that.
Good. Yes. So,
but also, like, there actually are player versions of the mods that Res can get, like, so that we can balance them if we need to.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff would be ridiculous if you had it yourself. So basically, we still have it sort of work. It mostly works the same way, but there will just be numbers tweaked to the player versions, and the same works as well for the what do you call it? The ritual sacrifice.
Headhunter,
Headhunter and stuff like that. So player versions of the monster mods for that.
Yeah, this new attention to these things is going to benefit like the pre-existing stuff like Headhunter and that as well. Yeah, that's insane.
There's a new. Probably should let people discover it. There's a new unique charm that possesses you with a random Asymmetry spirit as well, and so you get the daemons and the stats, and those technically also have player versions too. But actually, not to necessarily make things worse, to make things better, because monsters are balanced to fight player life and monster life, not in the same universe. So actually what we've done is all the things you steal that are monsters and the monster skills, like the explosions and the summoning bears and all that, we've actually specifically balanced them way up to be more effective against monster. So when you steal them, they're much more powerful, actually. Just so they're not just tickling monsters and doing 1% of their life kind of thing.
It was mentioned in chat, actually, the whole like Asymmetry modifiers and things on stuff that wouldn't transfer over with the companion system, surely.
No.
That would be a little bit too far, perhaps a bit unhinged.
We actually had to, because this is certainly a benefit. Once you have tamed the beast, it is not tradable. And people might immediately be like, oh, so that's sad. Well, the issue is, and as much as you might want some of that, I'm sure you don't want to be carrying around a whole bunch of tame beasts in your inventory all the time. So that every single time you find a good rare, all of a sudden you have to go and...
Because it would mean that finding a rare would become a thing. Yes, exactly.
It's actually like this annoying, in order to make the most money, I have to be constantly thinking about and carrying around tame beasts.
But then we also made it so that as soon as you activate a beast, then no one who comes into the instance after that is allowed to tame it.
Can't do any,
so you can't TFT it's like a whole there's a lot of thinking about that stuff in order to make it so that
it's a sad thing to have lost, but it is like no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not.
I didn't even think about that. The needing for cheat sheets and guides
exactly,
and stuff,
right. And so you have to be really careful. You have to be so careful.
This week.
And the thing is it's like we design this thing and then think, trading beasts is going to be fun, but then you realize that the horrific reality of what it will turn into. It's like, but at least we're thinking about that kind of thing. Like with more experience that we have now early, so that we don't sort of run into those problems. Exactly.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've learned from past issues with that sort of trading.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So talking about some of the other new skills, we had the addition of the Rhoa, which was teased quite some time ago, I think.
Yes.
But you've got it in and working now, and it looks like it's moving around pretty good.
Yes.
It's obviously... you've got like a big downside. If you get knocked off at heavy stun and stuff, you can't use melee from it, so it's for ranged attacks.
Yeah.
But it does seem like one of those things that it's going to be like everyone's going to use or no one's going to use because it's a clear speed machine.
It is a concern. I mean, look, my ideal situation is that you're using it sometimes and not using it other times. Like, if you're using it like during clear, I think it will, you will definitely want to, but we want to just make sure that we've got sort of fun things like that, and like it's just a cool fantasy. Like there's stuff like that I just want to get in, and it's like look, if it doesn't work later, if we have to nerf it, I mean, sure, I suppose, but I want something like that to exist. We believe that it is balanced as much as we can.
You sound very convinced.
It's balanced.
As I said earlier, you can probably get builds that get to the point of parrying indefinitely. So you can. That means theory you can probably get to the point of riding a Rhoa indefinitely.
Sure.
Again, enough evasion and enough stagger speaking into and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, fundamental question actually. Like, what's its move speed based on? Its own move speed?
The move speed is just your move speed. Like but it's
without the penalty.
But what you don't get is the penalty for when you attack.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But it's funny though, because even though it doesn't have a move speed bonus, it feels like you're motoring when you're using it, just because of the fact you don't get that downside anymore. Like you feel like the fastest thing on the planet.
It is
when you're doing it.
There are other more mechanical benefits like. It's considered a companion, which is a kind of subclass of minion that we've added, where you can only have one of each one companion base is a keystone for another, but you can only have one of each type. So you can have a tame beast and a Rhoa with the keystone.
Oh, right, yeah.
But inherently you can only have one companion.
Right, so you can't use a tame beast if you're using the Rhoa.
And then there are heaps of passives for if you have a companion, companions while they're in your presence and all that kind of stuff. Heaps of that stuff around the bottom of the tree.
Yeah, I saw you guys remade the minion damage is player damage node on the tree. It's your companion damage nodes become player damage nodes. And I was like, oh, that looks like I'm going to take that.
Well, that's the companion where it's more the mercenary over to ranger. Huntress is more you want your one powerful minion, and benefiting that benefits you, and you benefit it, and there's that synergy between you and your companions.
So since it is a companion, I like the idea of balance wise. Maybe it ends up being that you're map clearing on Rhoa back, and then you get to the boss and you dismount old school mounted knights who charge in battle and then dismount and fight.
Yep.
So if it ends up like that, that seems like that would be a pretty cool balance for it.
That should be the best way to use it, I believe.
Yeah, because then you gain access to your dodge roll for the boss fight where you need it.
Yeah.
And does the Rhoa then kind of do a bit when you're not on it?
It can attack, but I mean, it's not exactly a huge damage source or anything.
It's certainly better to stay at ranged. It's not the most durable of birds, for sure.
But it acts as a distraction. Maybe
I mean, it's a minion, right? It attacks things and does stuff.
Yeah, you can support it with minion supports to make it more durable and all of that. So
yeah. Oh, I mean, there's the one that's the minion takes 10% of the damage before you do. So sacrificial bird.
Yeah.
Poor little guy. So that sounds. I'm looking forward to playing around with that one then. speaking of new content, 100 new uniques this time. So how many are you aiming for, kind of in general? Is this about really like filling that roster out?
We want to have every base type have a unique for the purposes of chance.
Outside of boss uniques.
Outside of boss uniques. So we want every base type to have to have a unique that you can chance. And so that was with the eventual goal. One of the things, of course, that we had that was sort of a problem in early access is that because of the way, because when we were designing uniques, we kind of designed them like in order from base type up, just literally because that's the way the spreadsheets are arranged. It's like we ended up with all the low level uniques first, kind of before the higher ones, and it was kind of we didn't see that mistake coming. Like it was kind of stupid because
we thought we'd get through
we thought we'd get through them all, right? We were like, okay, we'll get all the uniques, and so we designed them all. It's like, okay, we'll start working on the art, just go down the list. So then we're like, oh crap, now we don't have very many in-game uniques. This time we're like, okay, we really need to make sure that in-game uniques are a thing. There's way more of them. So the focus really is on making sure there's lots of cool stuff to find, lots of really chase things that you can get. It's not.
You discovered the sort order changing in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it does help. Effectively, you should. This should be a lot better, and there's lots of cool stuff there.
And we're just going to keep going with that. By the way,
of course. Yeah.
100 now, 100 later, 100 next. You just keep going until kind of honestly, we never really stop making uniques. Especially anyone familiar with Path of Exile 1's history, is every single expansion since the dawn of time has had new uniques added to it. So, there's a lot there, and there's going to be a lot here eventually as well.
So then let's talk about the idea of players seeing a unique and be like, 1x, that's not very good. What do you guys want uniques to be in Path of Exile 2? How powerful should they be? What should they be aiming to do? And how should they affect the rares in that slot? I
mean, it's always a tension because we want rares to still matter. We don't want your character to be just only full of uniques. So it really is the role can evolve. So at the start of the game, they're really supposed to be more about that. So the earlier game uniques are supposed to do two things. One of them is when you find them, they should be powerful for a little while.
Yeah.
But then also they have a some kind of combo thing that you might be able to do with them at endgame. But we don't always know exactly what that might be. I mean, we've got sort of ideas, obviously, but it's we don't necessarily design them to say, okay, this unique definitely has an in-game build that's going to be actually strong to do with it. And that's because you're kind of putting in things where later on some other mechanic might come along or something might happen, and then people find an interesting interaction, and that's when the unique kind of comes into its own. And I mean, that's the same as magic card design philosophy, that kind of stuff. You just put in kind of weird stuff and sort of maybe you find something. But obviously it can mean that when people see a new unique, they might they dismiss it. But then one day they might also be paying vast amounts for it if it becomes a meta build. So but I feel like a game has to have that stuff in it in order to feel like there's lots of interesting ways to experiment, because it's the feeling of being the first person to discover some new interaction is an amazing thing, and then when people see something that feels smart, and it's if we don't have uniques that just take chances and do weird shit, we'll never have that kind of stuff happen.
When we're designing a unique, we don't think about what's the value going to be.
Yeah,
we're not even coming out of it going this is going to be really expensive or this is going to be really cheap.
Well, in some cases, you knew what you were doing with that Herald unique.
I don't remember. It's more of the charm but that's the thing. Are you aiming for the? Honestly, there's someone said the other day, they were like, it's a successful unique is one that should be divisive, and I was like, I agree for the most part, but not every unique should fill that role. Some should just be clearly, this is powerful, I want it for sure. It is going to be on my build.
Chase.
And others are like, what can I do with this now? And then others are just like, we don't know if anyone's going to do anything with this, throw it in. And sometimes it doesn't get anything happen with it for 3 years. But we don't know that necessarily. It's let's just take an experiment and throw it in there and let the players figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like you're with a lot of these uniques, you're designing a question. You're just I'm going to put something that's a little weird. Maybe someone will figure that out.
Well, I think as Rishi called it, it's a puzzle piece, right?
Yeah.
It's just a piece in the puzzle. You put it there, and maybe someone will complete the puzzle or half of it. Maybe not. And then others where it's just this is powerful.
Yeah. There are definitely some chase uniques in this. In this
100%.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So on chase uniques, then we've obviously had some pretty crazy ones so far. Where do they want to be in terms of how hard they are to get for players? Because at that point, you do need to consider like how expensive they end up being.
It's really tricky. So whenever we're looking, so if there's a unique that's broken, I guess there's two responses, right? One of them is make it rare enough that you only get the brokenness after the point when you're at the point where you're supposed to get that, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, like, you know, post Pinnacle boss type, like level of character development, right? And then the other response would be nerf the actual unique, and it honestly is a case by case. Like, you know, so I think that. Like Temporalis, for example, actually got nerfed in both ways. The actual unique was nerfed a little bit, I believe, although I don't believe it's maybe as much as what players might expect. But then also, okay, whatever. But also, we have made that one rarer.
It's still pretty crazy.
Oh, it's still crazy for sure. But the thing is like you want to chase stuff, right? So therefore, you don't want to just go nerfing everything into the ground the moment that it's good. So therefore, that one becoming rarer, I think, was the right answer there, because it was way too common. Due to the
we had also the issues with like I mean, there were three real issues. One is darkness at one point bypassed honor loss. So all of a sudden a no-hit run, it wasn't a no-hit run.
Yeah.
You had guard bypass on a loss, so once again a no-hit run is not a no-hit run. And then there was just like, well, how can anything hit you if you can kill literally everything on your screen in one frame, right? So those three problems, and so as the balance issue of not everything surviving for more than one frame due to a subset of builds, and those other two things go away, it becomes a lot rarer in itself. That it is much harder to acquire, require like very specific and ideally high skill gameplay. And then there's just like, well, it also was just too common, the relic that yielded it.
I mean, the expectation was that, because this is a hard challenge, most of the time when people try, they will fail. But the reality is once you get the ability to do it, you just trade for that thing and get it every time. So that's kind of meant that the rarity kind of didn't work like we thought. And, now that should be better in both ways.
Again, for the PoE1 players comparison, like it was far more common than Original Sin. Which was the same role in PoE1's version of the Sanctum, just to give us some sort of comparison.
It's just much easier to actually reliably do it.
And it shouldn't have been that much more common.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha. So crafting really surprised me. You guys announced, I thought we'd maybe get like one little thing, maybe you'd do something with essences or something, but we've got essences coming out a lot more, it looks like. You've got, because you're violent, you can
so greater essences are going to be much easier to get. One thing we didn't mention in the video is that like omens are way more common, because I believe you made the change that there's an omen in every
2.5 times more common, I think.
Than every thing. So like you've got stuff like that. Like we certainly knew that we needed to do more with what crafting stuff, and so we're kind of like, well, let's just make sure we're at least adding 3 or 4 things, like new things to. And,
every ritual will now have at least one omen in the window.
Amazing.
So you can know upon finishing a ritual, you're like, what is the omen I'm going to get, and hope it's a good one. And
love it.
Maybe most often it's not, but
But yeah, the greater essences, obviously, the Vile Orb thing makes it much more common. There's more sources of them with the map and everything like that. So that'll be happening more. And then of course there's the improvements to things like the runes. We've got higher level mods that you can get from them. There's like a ton more runes. There's like we just wanted to expand the set, and having the kind of like the niche mods that you can get and craft onto things, like it just needed more options. And it's sort of interesting because like some people say, oh, you don't have crafting in PoE2 because we don't have a crafting bench, but it's like we actually have a huge number of crafting options, and the crafting being good kind of comes down to like how many of these kind of weird systems are there and how they can interact. But we just have to be really careful because you don't want to get to the point where ground items no longer matter. And I think PoE1 kind of basically did get to that point for various reasons, where like people aren't caring about what's on the ground nearly as much. So we still want to make sure with every change we're making that they still use the ground stuff, that you're still excited for things on the ground, and so that's like a really careful balancing act, because they do directly contravene each other. Like the better stuff you can craft, the less important the ground stuff is. So it's a really sort of subtle balancing act. But I think that the stuff we've added here will definitely push things in a way where you feel like there's more smart things that you can do to kind of improve your stuff.
Yeah, well, I think done right, and what you're doing is making sure that the ground items do matter with each of these crafting systems. So you had that fundamental change where you can't just turn an item back into a white item.
Exactly, and that's very important. One of the biggest ones, I think, and that kind of then unlocks the ability to do more. And so the great thing about the socketables as a crafting system is that they don't compromise the ground at all, because they don't, they're on top of the stuff that you can get on the ground. So that's very good. But when it comes to the kind of the base mods, we do want to retain, like, that an item has. We do want to retain, for the most part, the kind of thing of like that part of the item generation is random. It's just that, it's just that on top of that, you get the more deterministic things that you can add in addition to. And then when you do it that way, it works really well. So socketables work really well as a crafting system for that reason.
Well, so on that topic, we've had this. Talking to you, it's like you're always saying to me that like this rune system is our crafting bench, but players don't keep asking for a bench anyway.
Right.
So obviously there's like a branding issue or a functionality gap.
So it is funny, because I was actually saying the other day that like if we had literally had that system be identical, except that the way it was themed was that there's a crafting bench you go to and craft extra mods on the items, like which literally be functionally the same, I think, and required materials that are effectively the runes that you get. Then I feel like people would be thinking that we've got a crafting bench. But yeah, ultimately that is that the rune system, the socketables are what replaced the crafting bench in the PoE1 style crafting bench.
And I guess it must have also been like with that initial kind of output of them was just not as many options as
100% as well. So that is the issue, and that's because they were relatively late in development. So now we're just sort of expanding that, and we'll continue to add more socketables probably with every release, right? Like we'll add more categories of them or do different things. It's like expanding the kind of type of mods, because there is a thing where it's the more like in the base mod pool for items, there can only be things that are really fundamental, and so anything that's kind of out there, we don't want to put in the base mod pool, because then you end up with this sort of situation where you get items and they've got random shit you don't care about. Like the crafting is where you want to have all of the kind of stuff that's like very build specific. And so adding more mods to that pool so that you can do that is the right idea.
Why is it that you can't socket and rune some things, like non-attack weapons, for example?
Well,
it was more just a choice for asymmetry, where we just wanted these things to feel different. There was also just like a little bit of a like, in the future, we'll add some system where we can do something else there. And so just not having everything be completely identical, much like how, the quality on those weapons works differently, where it affects the skill as opposed to just, base damage.
I do think it is something that we should be probably looking into sooner rather than later, though.
Because the asymmetry things, it's good to have like not everything be super homogeneous, but because we're talking about the importance of it being that extra layer of control over your items, which you just don't have if you're doing spellcaster.
Maybe we'll add an Arcanist's bench and theme it that way for those
okay.
ones.
All right, you forced my hand. I have to bring this up now. Can we get some sort of like cohesive, all-in-one bench for disenchanting, salvaging, selling for gold, Arcanist benching at endgame? I get in the campaign having these things be separate, but I like at endgame, it's much clicky.
You're not happy enough with them just being next to each other, putting them next to each other, and no. All right. Well, that's all right. I'll think about that one.
Okay, good. I've planted the seeds at least.
Yeah. Okay.
I've done my part.
All right.
There's ways.
There's ways. I like the sounds of that.
Well, at least for endgame, like
that's
I don't want the world to not feel like it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So,
but
having it that you can just like
you've got your hideout where they're all
it would have to be a hideout related thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, people are putting their NPCs within each other's personal space anyway, so the law goes out the window at that point.
For sure.
So we've also got Fractured, crafted via an orb from the cleansed monsters. How rare are those?
How do you quantify rarity like that? They drop from the monsters. I can't remember the exact number, but like I think I was kind of saying like 1 per biome, which is the kind of total blob of cleansed monsters. But then that obviously does get affected by things like pack size and all that on top of that.
So is that like 5 maps or something?
Well, it depends on how many of them you kill as corrupted.
Yeah,
because the ones you didn't cleanse while you were getting to the Nexus, those are the ones that then become cleansed. So you kind of have to choose, like when you go into a biome, am I going to beeline straight for the Nexus and then cleanse everything, or am I going to just fight them all as corrupted to get the rewards from that? So you're kind of choosing one reward or the other based on what you decide to run.
Okay, so you can kind of leave the Nexus for last if you want to.
Yes, if you want to
use it to try and get more fractured orbs.
Well, it's the other way around. Do Nexus first, then it cleanses all the maps, and then now you can get the most chance at fractured orbs, or you can fight them corrupted before going to the Nexus if you want to get the rewards that the corrupted maps have.
And we have for example, the corrupted bosses have their own uniques now.
So you're gonna want that.
There's a bunch of new modifiers and how they You know, so there's like random corrupted strongbox kind of things and all of that
Clever.
stuff. So you kind of really are like, I'm gonna, you know, have a look at the mods. I like this. I'm gonna do this, then this, then this, then the nexus, and then I'm gonna do the rest cleansed.
Does the cleansed boss have its own uniques as well?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It does have. It guarantees a fractured orb though as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
so you can get the boss.
So and you'll display if you hover over the map and it says like contains, I can't remember his name. Then you run it and kill it, you will get a fractured orb. So at least you will know that will drop one.
Yeah.
So with the fractured orbs being away fracturing, that's obviously super powerful for crafting. Are there any fractured items dropping pre-fractured? I quite liked that.
I think we went with no in the end.
Yeah,
we were going to do it, but then we decided not to. But we might do it later.
Yeah. So an extra add-on. Is there a particular reason for it or thought process for that?
There just kind of wasn't anything that really fit that exactly. I think
at some point you'll want some new thing to go
probably.
In that, like
probably.
This
personally, I would rather just drop more orbs, honestly, and let people choose how they want to use them.
I like it from the perspective of dropped items matter. Like when you're seeing a rare,
they kind of already
like,
do.
Ooh.
They kind of do here anyway because
they do,
like because you need that as the thing of the fracture. So it's kind of not necessary, I think.
There's other little subtle things, like for example, the cleansed monsters within cleansed maps can't drop equipment as a little thing. So they have much higher. Obviously, they're dropping things more like waystones, tablets, currency. They don't get to drop any of the armor or anything, so they're more like currency sources is like an interesting subtle thing.
If you want more currency, then play cleansed maps.
You know? So we're gonna have a lot more essences, a lot more omens, potentially ability to get fractured, recombination with the new, more accessible at low and mid tier
design
recombination.
4.0.
This is yes, recombination's certainly undergone some changes. This is a huge leap forwards compared to 0.1's crafting.
For sure.
So was it just about that you had to establish that really like humble baseline for crafting so that you could then go crazy with it like
honestly, I mean, look, on some level it can just be, you know, like you need an economy, you need to see how things evolve, you know, we just don't want to do too much at once. I mean, although this may seem like quite a lot. I mean,
it does,
but the thing is like, but in terms of the initial system, it's like if we'd have had all that at the start, I think that we wouldn't have been like, you know, we'll put it this way, it is hard to take this stuff away, so that's why we have to be a little bit careful as we do this.
Yeah, I guess you needed to kind of assess the fundamental things like the no scours, the no ults and stuff like that as well, because then you can have a better idea of how to build off that, which I'm super excited for. Crafting.
But of course, and if you know us, like more, there'll be more. There's always going to be more.
Oh, yeah. So. Oh, you got to have a new craft for every league, right? That's how it is these days.
Oh, yes.
I expect a crafting system for every league, thank you.
Something like that.
That's somewhat actually our intention. So.
Yeah.
I love it. Perfect. So let's talk about Endgame then, because that had some humble origins as well with the initial implementation of PoE2's Endgame, obviously trying some new things, being a bit experimental, not necessarily just wanting to copy PoE1's Endgame, but how far of your vision was 0.1's Endgame? Was it what you want?
I would say that the main problem that we had is there wasn't enough overlapping axes of randomness, as we call them, where effectively you need to have it so that when you go into a map, there's just chances for random shit occurring, and then that random shit like might happen alongside some other random shit, and then now the thing together is like a new scenario. So I mean, effectively,
random
like
squared.
yeah, exactly, right. So let's like if you look at what we actually added here in terms of like encounters, if you will, whatever that means to you, like we've added kind of more than 40, probably something approaching 50 encounters, and that's if you count things like, you know, each rogue exile is a separate one, and each, like, you know, spirit's a different one, and things like that, right? So those are the things. But the big difference between the ones we had before and the ones we have now is that most of these ones can overlap with other things. So you have a situation where, you know, you've got the Asymmetry wisp that like happens to infect the unique boss of the area, and then that leads to a combat situation that you haven't had to deal with before, or then, you know, like you've got some essence thing that, like, you know, or like, oh crap, you know, that like this other wisp like caused the thing to turn into a boss that then, you know, like, you know, it's just like it's all that stuff combining, or like, you know, what happens when this goes with a, you know, with a unique strongbox, and it's like all that combining stuff, and that's what leads to the situation where you've got an exponential explosion of like possible combat situations, and then sometimes you just run into stuff that you've never seen before because of that, because of this combined in some interesting way, and that's something that definitely PoE1 has got very well because it's got so many of these things that have been added over time, and it's also something that we took care to make sure that each league specifically did. So what PoE2 lacked was, I think, that. And so that will mean, I think, that the endgame is overall just much more engaging. Now, obviously, we're going to be adding more content and, you know, more of the other stuff. But fundamentally, it's like it was specifically more of that type of stuff that we needed to do. And honestly, I don't think we've even got enough yet. Like, we want even more. We'll keep on adding that stuff. But it needed to become a focus. And I think part of the reason is that like when we're first working on the end game, it's like we need to come up with the big ticket items, right? Like what are the the league things and like the maps, and we need to come up with all that stuff. And so it's the little detaily kind of things that kind of a little bit require a bit more like time and stuff to work on, even though they're actually like relatively efficient to make. Like we can make a lot of them when we do actually sit down and design them, because they're like making a new strongbox, like sure it's work, but it doesn't take like that long, if you know what I mean. But it is but it is that stuff that really adds all the flavor and kind of interest. So we'll just be continuing to do that through the game. And I mean, even yesterday we were having a conversation about like making it so more of the maps, even just like regular maps, have more interesting just little things that happen in them and stuff like that. Like more like what the campaign has.
Love that.
So we haven't like got there yet, but like through early access, we'll definitely be just like introducing more of those little details everywhere, so that you get the interesting things happening.
Yeah, so a bit like those exploration mechanics in campaigns.
100%, yeah, exactly. That's just, we just want to make sure that you feel that same way through the end game as well,
and with the leagues as well.
Yeah,
and like there's really only so much randomness that can occur within a breach in a map, and so they will end up feeling ultra repetitive. Whereas and again, in Parry 1, you had the boss that could spawn occasionally. You had 5 different factions, things like that. And it is very much our intention to expand on all the leagues, to have way more random things occurring, mini bosses spawning, whatever else. I have a whole set. I don't want to spoil them all yet, because that's a whole later thing. But definitely want to expand on all that. Even Expedition only has the one boss. It had 4 in the predecessor. Like we need to get back to having all of that depth and all of combat and all of those mechanics, and it'll help hugely, while also making sure we're adding new ones, of course. But what we definitely have learned is that our minimum standard for new ones is going to it should include all of these things from the get-go.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just signing ourselves up for like, here's 1,000 things we need to improve. Right. It'd be nice to actually get some of them finished. So that's going to be a goal going forward for sure.
But I think it's like, it is where our type of design shines, because like adding content is no longer a process of like, we work on a thing and then the players get to play, like it gets into a situation where like adding content has more value than just the content itself, because it adds to everything else too. And so that kind of makes it feel like the world gets like larger, in much larger proportion than what you have. And so like, it's an n squared thing where like, the square of all the stuff we add. So that, like basically it'll feel like it's ramping up in terms of interest as we add more content, rather than just feeling like you're just continuing like rather than every league feeling like you just add the same amount. It'll feel like it gets even bigger each time.
Yeah, like when you add Asmeri Wisps, that's not just about adding that. It interacts with all the other things that already exist that it can go ahead and affect. So that's tackling one of the, ultimately, I think the biggest things is just that like the core basic mapping of running an empty map was boring, and that's never what you want to be, obviously.
Yeah, we used to get it.
So like some of the issues there, I guess, as well, that were exacerbated by that problem was the fact that the maps were so big and that there were so many of them. Obviously, that's getting a lot better with the maps themselves becoming much more interesting. But it seems like this corruption and cleansing mechanic is breaking up and giving you something to progress through as you move towards the next tower or next boss or next other mechanic. I mean, I guess there's always something on your screen that you're pushing towards, it looks like.
Well, we want to try and, like, honestly, I don't even think we're even quite there yet. Like, we really want to make it so that you feel like there's lots of quests, as it were, in endgame, like not necessarily directly in the form of like, here is a quest objective, but like that you sort of have this feeling of like, there's like different stuff that you're like that you feel like, there's a thing, like exactly right. You need to ideally, like every time you do one of those, it's like there's another one just on the horizon that you're thinking about. So if we can achieve that, then we'll have succeeded. But it'll need to keep adding stuff, right? Like just more and more things, because obviously you need to have enough just core there to be able to get to the point of it doesn't feel like you're just repeating the same thing over and over again as well.
It seemed like this like explorable world map thing that you did for Endgame, being like looking like a physical actual map, was really wanting us to explore, but that wasn't really much of that. So you kind of
well, I mean, ideally we can. It's just about content really at that point. You just need to add more and more, and we'll keep on adding more. And this
100% get more.
And 0 to 0, I think, goes a long way to improving that for sure.
So with the corruption mechanic now, you're going to see some corruption on the map, and you're going to want to go there because it's a system that you can interact with.
Exactly,
and it's your skill points.
yes.
So you're unlocking skill points from that, which means you're unlocking more of the Atlas tree earlier on.
Your first Nexus, you have to run at a tier 1 map. And it will drop 2 skill points. It'll give you your first 2 skill points.
Awesome.
And then you're like, all right, where's my next Nexus? That's where I'm going for my next 2. And then your next one, and you have to do them 1 tier higher every time. So the second one, you got to do it tier 2 to get your skill points and so on and so forth.
It's not just it's not just grind 10 maps.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Good. I love it.
So yeah, it is very much like, let's go and clear these corrupted nexus, and then it's like, well, and there's the whole mechanic around it. But yeah, if you want to just like I want to get my points as fast as possible, just go nexus to nexus to nexus and get as many as you can. And if you're like, oh, I can't see any nexus, maybe go to a tower to reveal more, and then, you know, which you're doing way less frequently, mind you, thank goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a lot more objective driven as opposed to just, again, random grind and random exploration. There's at least, and you should be seeing a pretty decent chunk of unique maps.
I was going to ask, yeah.
I call them unique maps.
It's funny because I was pointing out to Mark the other day that the distinction between a unique map and a normal, like, there is no distinction anymore. We shouldn't even look at it that way. Like, it should be that every map is like unique in some sense.
There's not a unique.
There's not a unique map.
We do have an icon for it because they are kind of in a different echelon. Yeah. But yes, technically, unique map is a name that's a holdover from PoE1.
Yeah, because you can use mods with them with waystones anyway, so it doesn't. There's no actual reason for a unique to be any different than a normal map.
You can craft it and enhance it.
It really just comes down to how rare they are relative to other things, right? So.
And how rare are they?
I mean,
maybe in
so hard
terms
explain.
of player screen.
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said, I think
how many screens?
How many? I had the numbers, I just don't remember them.
Well, I mean, as I said, they should be common enough that you feel like there's always some kind of objective you're excited about on the screen. Right?
Honestly, more common than I was initially comfortable with, and then after trying it, I was like, okay, actually, this is like, this is reasonable. So
yeah, I feel like you initially probably want them to be common enough that you're like almost getting tired of those map layouts, so then you're incentivized to add more.
The good thing is, by the way, by adding more here, we didn't just keep them the same commonality as the two that existed.
Yeah,
they are just more common. It's not like part of the reason it wasn't as common before is because there was only two, and that would have just been repetitive and boring. One of the other restrictions is that the Vault of Kamasa was restricted to the Val City biome, so to speak, and that was one of the Citadel biomes. That's like one of the rarest and latest, you know?
Yes.
So it's like, we've not only made that more common within that biome, but a lot of the new ones, in fact, all of the new ones aren't restricted to those city biomes, and thus they are appearing more frequently. And some of them are like, you want deserts because they give you the essence map, or you want the mountain because they can give you this and that, you know? So ideally there's a little bit of just like, you see the edge of a desert and you're like, oh my God, please.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. This like idea of exploration is like, I felt like there needed to be something with biomes where like you're actually pushing into a biome, because there's that one node that like affected your drops slightly, but obviously that's not much.
The one that was the Shattered Lakes, for example, as you can probably imagine, only spawns in the water biome. And so there's a little bit of like, you know, and so does Untainted Paradise, and so does one other. So there are actually three special maps that can spawn only in the water. So go to the water.
And otherwise, how easy is it to find? You said there was an icon. Obviously, you kind of have an idea of what biomes. Is it like also something that's pretty visually
there's art there,
spottable on the map?
So the one we looked at with the megaliths, which had all the storm and lightning. Well, on the map, it has a bunch of storm and lightning.
Cool.
So, yes.
That's awesome. Cute. That's great. So we mentioned the Atlas passive tree, and you're seemingly, I think, you're getting better progression of that. But definitely an issue I had with it personally was that it felt very top heavy, both for the core one and also especially for the league mechanics, where like the league mechanics, you don't get points until you kill the bosses, which to me feels like the end of it for most players.
That kind of was the original pitch of that, and I wouldn't say that's really changing here, but there is more we want to do with that, and I think that it could be made better, but 020 isn't getting a change there to that side. But in terms of the actual core Atlas, it definitely is. You know, like you're getting that earlier. There's more. It's a bigger tree. There's more interesting stuff.
There's subtle changes to getting them in the sense that, like, for example, the difficulty 0 Pinnacle bosses are way lower life.
Well, that's actually
now.
good. That's actually a very good point. So yes, difficulty 0 is now like half the life that it had before, and so that's like a pretty substantial
difficulty
change.
4 is currently the same, as what it was before. So it's same top end, but like easy, more accessible for more people at the bottom end.
Right.
And then also because of like due to the reliquary key working the way it does, all Pinnacle bosses can drop all uniques at all difficulties, except they are like substantially less common at difficulty 0, but you feel way less bad for running them at that point now.
Right.
So again, it's just opening that up to a lot more people to farm, and it's not so much dependent on if your build can't do difficulty 4, you're not really a viable character kind of mindset.
So much more easy onboarding for those.
Which will give you your first sets of points certainly a lot easier now. That being said, not if you're playing the most broken build of all time, because you're probably nerfed into the ground, let's be real. So with your new build, we'll have to see how that balance goes.
With their new broken build.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, one of those Spectres.
Yeah.
Anyway, the ultimate point being, yeah, you're certainly going to get those initial set of points easier than before. However, you are right that something isn't quite right there still, and I do need to kind of explore.
We are going to do more with this later. We've talked about this issue, but we didn't have time to do anything about it in 0.2.0 as much. But certainly by the end of early access, I think that system will probably look quite different.
Part of it also, as we were talking about before, adding all those extra bits of content to the leagues, it'll help give more interest to the trees and more nodes we can add to actually invest into. Because if you think about a breach, there's only so much you can actually modify right now. Right, there's a level of radius, speed, density of monsters, and there's the standard stuff with monsters, but you can only go so far when you don't have all of that depth of different factions and different bosses and different mini bosses and different itemizations or additional things with catalysts and whatnot. You are quite limited in how expansive a tree can be, and so it'd be nice to get those things in and also kind of look at the trees at the same time and reevaluate how that works, just so we can have them be more interesting while we're at it.
Right.
But yeah.
And now with the Pinnacle bosses, if you're halfway through a level, you don't need to. Oh, maybe I'll do that when I get the rest of the level now.
Yes, that was a good change. So yeah, as he was saying, as you were saying, you no longer gain experience or lose experience anymore from Pinnacle, so you could just feel free to do them anytime. I think that's just a straight up upgrade, and I think that it's not like you were playing Pinnacle bosses for experience.
No.
So it does the downside is not an issue really.
It also is the nice thing of really just keeping if we add more leagues, for example, and we end up with a domain of timeless conflict problem, where it's just rotations to max level, ultra.
Yes,
ultra
we
quick.
don't want that type of content to be the way you level.
At least now we can say maps are the way you level. That is what you're doing. And sure, you might get some sort of unique map rotation here, and maybe not. I don't know. It depends. But hopefully we can avoid that. But either way, it's just really you're playing in maps to level, and that's what you're doing.
That's
and there's something
that's
nice
not
about
itemized
that.
content, right?
At least until we've added Delve.
Well, sure. I mean, there will be future parallel in-game systems.
Confirmed.
Right?
I know you want to do something like Delve.
Yes.
You're a fan. I mean, you made the end game look like Delve, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been a long-term problem, and one we need to properly apply to the other game as well. That the whole not can't do my content because I got a level, and I'm even if you're only 15% in. You're
It's just not as bad. It's just not as bad in PoE1 because the leveling is faster.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
It hasn't been on our radar as much.
So speaking of map progression, there's been some fundamental changes there. You're telling me that now you can no longer drop maps below your current level of map.
It's correct. So yes, you no longer get if you're playing a T5 map, you're only going to get T5 maps, or if there's a boss there, a T6 map. But we've also smoothed the way the whole progression works. So we've actually the map drops are way less random now entirely. When you kill the last rare in a map, that has it can affect it. At T1, that was a 100% chance to drop another map of the same tier. And then as you go up the tiers, you can still sustain that using Waystone chance. So effectively, it's de-randomized that a lot. And then there are several ways that you can get upgrades. So in terms of going up the tiers. So one of them is that when you kill a boss, that's a guaranteed +1 upgrade. Then of course you can still cube them up 3 to 1 recipe to go up a level, or you can run it corrupted. And if you're running a corrupted map, then because it drops the same tier, that's a sort of guaranteed. When I say corrupted, I mean the one that
Varlob corrupting up
+1. That lets you do the run them the same level as well. So you've kind of got those 3 options, but it's much more intentional now. It's if you're going up maps, it's you're deciding, okay, this is a thing I am doing. You don't just kind of have that it doesn't just happen. So it's kind of supposed to make the jump if you're just looking to sustain, you can do that, pretty much guaranteed. And unless you're dying more than the number of times you've got portals, which is obviously the thing now that you can go through portals again, the sustain is going to be a lot easier if you are dying. But then it's once you've achieved that, it's okay, you effectively can sustain forever. The cases where people just drop off the bottom and have issues should be way less common.
Ultimately, it's way less random, way more deterministic.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you can as long as you are able to do the not die all the time, you will sustain that tier forever.
Right.
Assuming you can roll enough, a high enough mod count. And there is a boss here, I'm going to go up a tier.
Yeah.
And you go for the boss, you kill the boss, you go up a tier.
And if you...
and then you sustain that tier forever as long as you can do the difficulty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just very clean.
And if you're adding more mods, which you do need to be doing to continue to maintain 100% ability to go up tiers, and if you're doing that early, you're getting more maps than what other people are getting, which means you can do the cubing as well. Like it's just kind of like it just much more effectively gets the thing where good players can advance at the right speed, normal players don't fall off the bottom of the curve. It kind of solves all of those issues but also you're not going to have just like hordes of low level waystones that you don't need as well. So
and just no, it does. There are still, you can get to the highest tiers relatively quickly. You have to prove you're good enough, your character's good enough, but if you're doing it, you get there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty quick, and you can take it at your own leisure as well, and that's completely fine. So it's not like, oh, we've made it way longer to get to tier 15. Like, none of that is really the case. It's just that before you could luck into getting to tier 15 quickly, with some level of, biasing the luck, of course. Or you could just be like, what the heck, I'm like constantly running out and have a really bad time.
Right.
And so now it's just way, way more like predictable, and honestly, it probably has way more of an impact on the sustain problem, which we didn't really, which we talked about, which is the respawning. I would argue this thing has like way, way, way more impact on map sustain than the respawning does. I mean, obviously, if they're paired, then they relate.
You need both because because the guaranteed drop comes from the final rare. So if you were just dying, you would never get it. So the respawning is necessary in order to make it so that that's going to happen for players who and obviously as it gets more difficult, and you get less portals, you start to get to the point where you're going to run into trouble. But if you're a good player, you should be able to get up into the top and sustain very well.
Yep.
You mentioned the idea of maps dropping magic by default.
Yes.
Is that something you're still doing, or?
I believe it is. But no, actually, wait. But there wasn't a concern about that, which I wanted to talk to you about later.
Maybe not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later because the concern was raised that I think is valid. So we were going to make it so that maps drop magic and above, but there might be issues. So we'll discuss that later on.
Well,
non-decided.
Yeah,
undecided. Yeah.
Undecided. Yeah.
You thought it was decided.
Got a week left.
Yeah, we've got a week left. It's fine.
Still figuring. It sounds like much more deterministic progression if you're able to prove the power that you have.
That's the main thing.
It just should be, am I strong enough to do this? Yes, I can do it.
Right.
Not, am I lucky enough to do this, and am I strong enough to do this?
Great.
One of those axes, get out of here.
Love it. So we've got rogue exiles populating the maps now. How common are these guys, especially with unique, since you get their unique guaranteed? I love that.
It's 1 in 8%, 1 in 12.5 to start with, but of course Atlas Tree be Atlas Tree. So you can speak into that. And
is there like a map modifier for that or something to guarantee it? Or something
there
like that?
are. I think in this case, this one is the exception, whereas you can get normally guaranteed of the other things. We wanted the Exiles to be one that you can't just guarantee all the time.
They don't always have uniques.
Yeah.
But when they do, they're using them. The AI is very cool, like how it works.
I mean, they can have 0, 1, 2. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from having uniques in every slot.
What?
But like, it is.
There's a chance of that would be.
It is absurdly rare.
I assume it's just roll per slot, basically, right?
Yeah, it is
roll per slot. So
yeah.
But
so
you might have a line of just
fraction of a fraction of a percent for like
exactly.
all of them, but still like 5 or something like that.
You can have them.
But they have quite a lot, like because they're a player. The assumption is that their other gear is also relatively good, so they do generally drop. More biased towards dropping higher tier rares and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're doing that like full set of items because you've killed a player.
Yep.
Cool, I like that. I always love that little thing. And I feel like it's even more important here in PoE2, so that's awesome. But just some of those will be unique, maybe.
We wanted them to be less common than the other content, but like way more exhilarating when you find them.
Yeah.
But of course, again, you can speak into them at the cost of other things. That's your choice.
Cool. Is there going to be some sort of like warning that they're coming, or are you going to know they're in the map ahead of time, or are you just going to get ambushed by these guys? Leaf zone from off
you
screen?
won't know they're in the map ahead of time, much like anything random you run into.
But they talk though, and they'll say something before
they monologue before they murder you.
They do,
don't know if I'd go to quite the level of monologue.
When I said some insult you, I'm not joking. Like some do literally insult you, and I believe one of the monks is a pacifist, and he's like, I don't want to do this. Don't force my hand. He'll do it anyway. But,
I'm not. I'm just. You're just like running away.
Yeah,
He's like, don't make me
don't force
this.
my hand. Yeah, exactly.
well, look, you can just run away. you know, I really like the here's an occasional spike in difficulty, and again, it's important that they are relatively rare for that reason as well. But I do want it to be when you find one, you are very excited to kill it, and of course, even though they portal out, you still have your number of portals you have. So unless you're running like a full 6 modded Waystone, just get back in there and he's gone, but or whatever, you've lost your uniques or non-uniques, whatever they had, but either way, just move on, you know.
I mean, you guys were somewhat forgiving with this. You didn't make it so that they take your items.
Yes, that would have been good.
That's an event at some point.
Don't give me that idea.
That's maybe a 1 week event or something in the future.
It'd be pretty easy to do.
Just take one of your items.
Yeah.
and then you got a nemesis system where you can find them and try and get it back in the future.
And you had the Tame Rogue Exile gem.
I know Tame's the right one.
Higher
Exile.
You run up and you can quickly be like, take 1 million gold.
Just give him a little snack. Like, yeah, you want to follow me?
I mean, to be fair, that would be a fun system.
It actually would. That's actually not a bad
Running
idea.
up and just being like, hey, I'm here, give me 100,000 gold and I'll be your ally.
I know you've tinkered with the idea of a hireling system at points in the past, so now you've got your mercenary hireling system, right? Rogue Exiles. They recruit the one with good uniques.
We'll see. We'll see.
Going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
So we did have some League mechanics come over from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2. You're going to be looking to port more over? Are you going to be doing some unique ones that we haven't seen before? I
mean, we're definitely going to be doing more unique ones that are, that are just completely different outside of what we've done in PoE 1. Absolutely. But I mean, I think that sort of the hope in the long term is that each, as we kind of get, past the end of early access and as we're sort of, just going out, that each time we do something, we're both adding a completely new League mechanic, but also potentially bring something back as well, kind of like as another additional kind of here's another fun thing. So that's probably sort of what I imagine will happen. But it kind of really is case by case. Like some things we don't want to bring back, some things we do, you know, and my opinion can change on a dime as well. Like if someone suggests like a new way to interpret something, then I might be like, oh, actually that is great. So, it honestly, people assume that we have a full plan of literally everything, but it's like in reality, it's like it's very much responsive to what's happening and the actual plan relates to the things that are definitely happening, right? You're talking acts, you're talking classes, you're talking all that stuff is definitely that's happening. It takes a long time to produce. It sort of happens in the background. You've got outsources, armies of people kind of working on that stuff, and then all the kind of more incidentally stuff is very much let's do something cool, let's just make this, why do we do this, and we don't have a I don't have a plan for the next 12 strong boxes. It's just just come up with an idea and that's cool. Just a fun little project for a designer to work on.
How do you feel like some of the ones that were, I felt somewhat definitively part of Exile 1 in terms of clear speed, like Breach, for example, have settled into PoE 2? Do you feel like they're in a good spot, or were they a good idea to bring over to the game?
Look, I think Breach is. I mean, look, Breach is fun, right? I certainly wouldn't want to remove it. I don't know about there's probably been some balance changes.
I mean, it was spawning too many.
It has.
Yeah, let's just say that without a doubt.
It's much better now to PoE 2 standards. Yeah.
It's currently on PoE 2, it's just too out of control. It just needs to chill.
Right.
There was a little bit of an assumption made where it was just well, you'll get overwhelmed by monsters and it's more a matter of survive as long as you can. And then, of course, because you get self-propagating herald builds that are just literally can kill anything.
Which, by the way, heralds don't self-propagate anymore.
Just
get that out of the way right now.
The power of the characters kind of distorted the League balance in a way where it's we have to make some changes. So yes, it's coming down a bit.
I think we saw that one coming.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that people will say they saw coming, but it certainly does end up being the case that the patch notes are. So by the way, we aren't releasing them at the end of this live stream. We're going to be releasing them next week, but they are going to feel like a bit of a nerf fest for sure because there's a lot of things that needed to get.
Let's talk balance.
Yeah. All right.
My expectations and anticipations are that this first one is going to be an absolute wrecking ball of chaos and carnage, and see where things land.
Yeah.
But then maybe over time it'll become a sledgehammer, and then a fine carpenter hammer.
Sure, that definitely should be the case.
As I said earlier, it's 10,000 things will change this time. 5,000 things will change next time. Then hopefully we can halve it every single time.
People should really be going in with the expectation that like nothing they knew about how the game was balanced before is the same. Just forget everything you know. Like, you know, exactly. So basically we'll that kind of just means that like, you know, everyone who's finding builds, like do it again. Like you are going to find more shit that is like outrageously broken again, but it is not going to be the same shit that was broken before.
Attribute stacking, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's the hope is though that yes, you're right. It'll stabilize to the point, and it will take time, but we will get to the point where we no longer have things that are easy to become outrageous with. Right, like the idea is like it shouldn't be that you can just slap a combination of supports together and then like you're just like destroying pinnacles in 14 seconds. You know, like it should be that.
14's a long time.
Yeah, okay, sure. But
you mean 14? That sounds like terrible.
Exactly.
That's not even on PoE.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying is with no items, right? But anyway, so the point is that like the first time you fight a pinnacle, it should be a bit of a fight. But then of course you do get back to the ability after, you know, like when like kind of like continuing to expand, like continue to develop your character post pinnacle to the point of being able to annihilate them in seconds.
Yeah.
But it's just like that has to be earned. It can't just be that like just a combination of supports that you can get trivially will do that.
Or like a common unique, you know, and then that's it.
Yeah, exactly,
you know,
right? So, but it can be. But once again, but if you get Temporalis, you know, it's like, well, now, you know, like now you've got some shit going on. But it really has to be that, you know, there is an economic factor involved in becoming ridiculous.
Yes.
And so it's when that's not the case that we have a problem that we need to hit shit with a big giant balance sledgehammer.
Yeah. So originally I was going to come in and like ask about all the specific things, but we can just assume that like it's not going to be chaos. So I like the idea instead of focusing on kind of like your core. What are you aiming for? What are your goals? What are your metrics? So a number of like damage / how fast you kill a pinnacle boss.
Yeah,
that you're aiming for, and then how much players can exceed that, and you're like, good job.
Yeah. So it really should be that you're not killing, as I said, not killing pinnacle bosses that fast at the moment. Like a good sort of benchmark for like just a guy walks in and like has kind of got something that's like not stupid, but also like not like doing something, you know, like not crazy. And we kind of imagine that they should have about 50k DPS doing something like that. But at the same time, anything up to 500k DPS is
10 times,
you know, is also okay. And well, that'll take you from taking a 3-minute fight down to like a 20-second fight. Like, you know, that's your range of like potentially acceptable kind of things going on. But if you're doing above that, then you're in like, we're probably going to nerf you territory at some point. So that's kind of like the thing. Now, it's worth mentioning that like we've lowered like the life of pinnacle bosses to get that to be right and sort of things. Like the difference between a T15 boss and a pinnacle boss was just way too much. So that has been that's been sorted out. Like it's things like that we just need to sort of get things in the right place here. So that's a sort of expectation. Now, obviously, people are going to still find ways to get 10 million DPS somehow, I'm sure, even though we're like nerfing many things. But the thing I think that when we're talking about nerfs and how we want to do, my key thing that I want to try and achieve always is that whenever we're nerfing something, we're only nerfing the thing that was particularly like we're nerfing as little as possible to make it so that the average Joe who works in and just tries to do stuff is not getting affected by it.
Yeah.
Like it should only be the like ridiculously broken synergy thing that kind of like has some way of dealing with it that's actually affected by this. And I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe you've got some of like, you know, a way that a targeted nerf that kind of like,
I mean, like say lightning conduit, you're not going to reduce the base damage of it because someone's able to hit for 150 million with one hit from it. Like that comes from the compounding like top end levels of exposure, stacking, conductivity, and more so shock effect, right? So it's more about like take away from the shock effect scaling side of things there and increase the base damage even, you know, like do changes like that where it's like for an average person it's now better, and for someone who is absolutely abusing's not the right word because like they're doing the right thing technically by their standards, that are using all those extreme factors, you know, bring those down a little bit, keep those regulated, and like it'll increase the average user's experience while narrowing, you know, bringing this down and bringing this ideally up a little bit in a lot of cases.
I like the idea that I felt it's somewhat reassuring to hear that there was actually kind of like a math here. Like ultimately you're saying bosses have X amount of hit points. It has 500k hit points, and so we expect players around 50 Yes.
Right.
So that's a clear number. Like we know that. Oh yeah, and we're okay with you killing that like 10 times faster than we expect.
Right.
But it's when you get it down to 1 second.
Exactly.
Then we're
10,
like,
10 times is fine, right?
And the problem with the more DPS you have, it is now I have to dodge less.
Yeah.
I get more crowd control.
There's a snowball.
It is. It really is. So you're always going to be incentivized to do that. And you get to this weird thing where now it's just like, okay, well, I think you after a while was like, I haven't actually seen a Pinnacle boss fight that lasted more than 2 seconds.
That was really sad to me. Probably the saddest thing about the early access launch to me was seeing the first Pinnacle boss fight, and it just like, and it's like, it's like nobody had to care about the mechanics. The first time
I gave it so many skills.
Exactly, right? Like there were so many skills and all these things, and it's like none of it mattered. And it's like that's sad.
Yeah.
We ideally was in a situation. Now I hope that doesn't happen again, but honestly, it's probably wishful thinking.
As I said, 10,000 things before, there's still going to be
there's still going to be more, and it will happen every time. And people will find stuff,
look, this again by the end of early access, I want to say we're going to be in a real fucking good spot with this in a way that is not going to have so much abusive stuff and getting rid of that whole I feel like I have to play X. Like,
it is that
very
100%
demoralizing to players when they played their thing and all of a sudden something comes out and they're like,
and so the way you will know that we're successful is because you get more diversity in classes. Because it means that there's no longer the thing that everyone has to play because it's easy to be
I mean, you definitely saw that where it's like the comments of any build guide, it's like, oh, another Archmage build. Oh,
exactly.
It's just Heralds again.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, this isn't even a build, this is just Herald again.
You go look at like, what are all crossbow people playing? And crossbows is actually the least used weapon type. And so you specifically start there and you're like, okay, well, here's a bunch of people using these skills. Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom. Okay, well, never mind. The crossbows are relevant, right?
Yeah. Even without stat stacking, still better than
and it's like, okay, well, obviously take some away from there, and then it's like, okay, well, what are you left with? Well, you're still left with probably crossbows are bad. So what do you have to do? And it's like, crossbows now, for example, just a quick change is like instead of using one-handed damage mods for added damage, they use two-handed and their base damage. And then all the skills now have a higher growth per level because they scale with other external factors like attack speed less because they have the reload time. So they will be getting more damage per level, whereas before, most skills were very consistently growing per level. So almost every spell would get the same amount of damage per level regardless of everything else it had. And this is how you got things like Spark just being the dominant skill, out of control because it scales not only that, it scales obviously the number of projectiles kind of out of control, and with projectile and duration and other multiplicative scaling factors, you'll end up with just like, well, of course I'm just going to spark everywhere. And so now it's like, well, spark has these other multiplicative things, so it should get less damage per level. And this wasn't PoE 1 and was the right answer, and we somehow didn't replicate that exact thing that we did.
Yeah, everything just had the same damage growth.
Yes, we end up with exactly the same. So now every single skill we're looking at it and going, you're going to scale more, you're going to scale less, you're going to scale more on the damage axis because they have other things that scale.
And this just means that like when you're asking, well, what skills have changed? Well, the answer is literally all of them. Like no skill will have the same damage as before. It's like a complete a complete rebalance of the whole thing.
Expectation-wise, it means that any skill that didn't have a lot of things you could do for it will get more damage.
That should be the case. But I mean, even as well, like when we're looking at things like, I sort of mentioned it vaguely before, but like I'm trying to make sure, like we are trying to make sure that like the combos that work early game still work late game, which is kind of another important element of that too.
Yeah. So crossbow's been buffed a lot, and I also heard the other thing that was definitely getting a lot of buffs as Warrior as well.
I mean, we'll see how that looks.
Everything up and everything down. It's so hard to It's so hard to have like a cohesive message with a single like this class is better. Because it's just, I mean, it's easy for mercenary skills or for crossbow skills because I can look at those numbers and just be like, okay, everything's clearly higher. But then in others, it's like it's too
that's
easy
the thing
to
with Warrior.
say.
Warrior was like in many cases there was a lot of things that it was actually not bad. Like it was good in many ways.
But then it didn't have anything that was outrageously broken like how the other classes did.
Yeah,
in the same
and
way.
it didn't gel with all players in many ways as well.
I mean, we've also done balance changes on literally every ascendancy class as well. Pathfinder has like 2 extra notables and some changes. You've got a new notable on Chronomancer. You've got a changes to Chrono was way too much utility stuff. Like where's just my like good thing, So like you got like a good
my
thing,
bonk node.
Less niche, more something. And then we've just done that on every single class. We've upped upped a lot of the undertaken or bad things, and we've downed a lot of the really good, powerful things that were over the top. So
this is why we've gone back to the more conventional patch note cycle of a couple of days beforehand, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely.
If they were ready, you would have them. They're not ready because we're not finished, right? Like, and giving someone half the balance changes doesn't allow them to even make educated decisions on what they're going to play.
So it's just completely pointless at that point.
So we'd rather give you everything all at once instead of just some here's,
But even once you have the patch notes, like, don't even be under the mistaken illusion that you'll be somehow able to determine what the best builds are from that. Like, this because it's such a big difference.
It's hard to take things into context because you can look at it and say, oh, okay, so like this thing got buffed, but this thing got nerfed. It's like, okay, but you're linking just two things. You're not linking all of the other things.
Yeah, exactly. So,
we'll try though. We'll try.
Yeah, sure. Give it a shot. Do your best.
Look, when the game released, you had to learn everything. You just might have to do it again and again. Every single patch every major patch after this, you're going to have less and less of that, and your familiarity will be able to come in and be useful. So at least from a balance perspective at this point, like it's not like we've structurally changed the campaign and all that. So you have still a lot of information and knowledge that is going to help you play the game better anyway. On your second. I mean, a lot of people maybe made multiple characters, but for a lot of people, this might just be their second character.
Yeah.
So they're certainly going to be more equipped. And we've had the races, so you've been able to see how the best people play.
Oh yeah. There's definitely some good tips to learn from there. Oh yeah. That lever skip with the portal. Oof, beautiful. It's my favorite. On the slightly bigger picture as well, like life and armor versus energy shields, are you happy with kind of where either of those are at, or what do you kind of hope to achieve with them?
Energy shields certainly, I mean, primarily due to Grim Feast. And like mana stacking being a little bit out of control that's been too strong on more the inside of defense for sure. Expect some pretty drastic changes there. As for armor, well, it's one of those like accuracy kind of things, right? Where it's like or dexterity where it's like honestly our next point with that is honestly just to get in a room and just be like, all right, let's pretend it didn't exist and we were coming up with the game from scratch and we're like, okay, we have strength. What would we want the ideal defense to be? And honestly, it might even extend further than that. And really just see, firstly, to make sure we end up, if we don't end up at the same point, to make sure we end up as better, maybe we do end up at the same point and we do just go, okay, here are some other changes that we need to make around physical damage in particular or something like that. But it's one of those things where at this point we just need to like review it from literally back to basics and see where we end up, because it might be something completely different, but like it might also end up being relatively the same, and maybe it was the better answer. But either way, it's worth the discussion and worth the time because, it's. I wouldn't say we're happy with it, and I wouldn't say we're necessarily like all the way unhappy with it. But it's there's something not quite right going on for sure.
You're still fundamentally questioning some of these things and willing to go back to the drawing board on them, which is quite interesting.
Well, 100%.
This is the time to do it.
We drastically changed how evasion works, and I would say it's for the better. And we should be exploring that with everything, and so we just need to do that process still. That being said, as we make things more like the shield block better, as we buff the ascendancies or nerf them in on the other defensive arcs, things like armor will become better. But again, it's not quite right, but I don't have enough information to say where it will look, what it will look like in the future. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's talk about recovery as well, because that's another big thing. I remember early on ExileCon discussions about the importance of limited recovery in making combat matter, so that you could have situations where you're attritioned or where like the hit that you took matters for the next hit that you take, and just back up the full. But it's pretty good in boss fights, honestly. I feel like recovery is somewhat limited. That still happens a bit, but certainly in clearing, you have access to tons of recovery with cannibalism and things like that. It's
certainly out of control, and it's a little bit of, again, partly due to the fact that kill speed and clear speed just was way higher than we had expected and what we balanced around. And because if we were balancing around what people are currently doing with the upper echelons of builds, you'd have to have effectively every average player and average build just could be it would be useless for them. Now, there are ways around that, of course, but part of it is like a lot of the recovery mechanics, like if you're talking about things like on-kill and based on damage dealt, it is a rich get richer problem. And so yes, there are cases that are problematic, and then there are just characters that are too strong. And there's a little bit of both going on. I wouldn't say we've targeted any recovery specifically here, really.
Okay.
It's not been a main goal. I'm not going to say that there aren't little bits changed here and there, but it's more about, we've really made sure to just... It's kind of hard to say exactly what we've done because, again, this is probably a thing we're going to have to look at next time because there are so many changes that it is hard to even, understand how this is going to fit into
once
all
the
of that
dust
now.
clears, you might be able to see how
100%. Like we're at the point where we do need a little bit of all right, we need another round of testing for this because and again, I'm going to stress it is actually impossible for the amount of changes for us internally to be able to be certain or test all of this.
Yeah, but the vision is still that idea of like more stricter recovery or less powerful recovery than what.
Well, it shouldn't certainly be like here's one little piece and now it's fully solved, right? Like having heaps of recovery should be something you can achieve, but it should require a decent amount of investment or high tier item itemization, right? Like for sure it should be possible. It just shouldn't be trivial.
Yeah. So, and on that note, then for like vision, what's your vision of what Path of Exile 2 is supposed to be? Because I think some people are still like unsure about, is it supposed to be just kind of more like Path of Exile 1, a faster game, or is it supposed to be a slower game, a much more different thing? Like, this is a hard thing to communicate, but it gets asked a lot, and I feel like people are still a bit unsure.
It's funny though, because like once again, it's not. I don't view it as just a pure speed question. It's about like, is the combat engaging and fun?
Yeah.
And also, are you getting to the point where you never get to engage with bosses? Like, if you're never, if the first time you fight a boss, you just destroy it without seeing any of its mechanics, then that's a problem. And it doesn't really say anything about the pace of combat. Like, if you look at some of the Huntress stuff we've got there, like, it's incredibly fast-paced when it comes to, like, dashing around and stuff, but you still have to engage with things, and that's the key element for us. So, like, obviously players want to get ridiculously powerful, and we still want to let them get ridiculously powerful. It just has to be earned. It has to be, like, after a certain point. And, like, after you, like, once you have finished your character, once you've sort of done everything, then yeah, you should be just like, like crazy and like beyond the point of all reason. It's just that you have to earn it. You have to get there, right? And like that's the power growth thing. That's like it's really hard to sort of just like smoothen that out across the whole game, but like that's ultimately the goal, right? You have to kind of get to the point of like that. You constantly feel you're getting stronger. You always feel like the next, like, oh, I got this, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and you keep on going. And you have to scale that all the way to the end, because the moment that you get to the point where you're just trivializing everything too early, it's like, well, the rest of the game just becomes boring after that point, right? It has to be that there's the level of that you still have to get.
And so kind of based on that earlier discussions about like damage and boss time to kill and things like that, it sounds like the time where you want that to be starting to taper off, like the players can start to cheat that a bit, is after they've done Pinnacle bosses.
Well, you should feel that way multiple times throughout the game. But then later you still then get to a new level of challenge that still requires you to engage again. Like if we're doing our job correctly, it's like you reach a point of feeling like you're a god, and then you're like, oh shit, but there's new god-like shit above me that then makes me have to then do
the uber gods.
Exactly right. So like, you have to keep on with that train. And it's actually really hard to take you back from feeling like, oh, I'm all powerful, back down to like I'm feeling, and so you have to kind of get that in there as you
want that
out.
Dragon Ball anime arc.
Yeah, for sure, right?
There's always a new level of Super Saiyan
exactly.
after the previous
exactly, right? That's what you have to be able to do. And so, yeah, it's just smoothly taking up that power level curve, all the way to the end.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes down to things like movement speed when clearing, it's about like if you're able to just ignore everything because you're moving so fast.
Yeah, exactly. If you're able to ignore everything, then you obviously you will move really fast. If you're not able to ignore everything, suddenly your clear speed is like not as big of a thing. So long as there are still things that are challenging you, so long as you reach the next tier and like everything's harder again, then you're good.
I feel like a point of the difficulty here between the communication of this with you guys and some of the people in the community is that I feel like you're not really looking at it in terms of PoE 1 versus 2. You're just trying to answer that question specifically. Yeah. So it's not really about like it being like PoE 1 or 2.
Exactly, right? It's just about making the combat good.
It's either the combat is fun or it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of spectrum of stuff there, but I would say that you want to be able to engage with a boss. You want to be able to fight its mechanics and do its skills, and you want to feel like you can overcome those over time and get better, and you want to engage with monsters, and yeah, there's probably some people who are like, no, I don't. I want to just press a button and loot drops on the ground, and I don't have to look or do anything. And
well, so that's an interesting point. Is there's this let's say the quote unquote mythical average build is are they able to switch their brain off and watch Netflix on a second monitor? only if they're doing like maps 3 levels under what they should be doing or something, or should that be able to happen at kind of like
once you're at your tier of godhood?
Yeah, but I actually want to address that because, like, okay, so I'm watching. Well, okay, right now I'm watching Deep Space Nine, funnily enough, but you know, I'm watching Deep Space Nine as I'm playing, as I'm testing the game, right? It's like you develop a muscle memory, and that muscle memory can include using multiple skills and doing like multiple things, and that's still to me more engaging than just holding down a button, you know?
So you're saying this like watching things on the secondary thing isn't about the game being easy; it's just a skill issue. You need to get good
I wouldn't say that.
to...
I'm just saying that your muscle memory can develop from more than just using a single skill. You just, you know, like and we've always sort of said that there's this thing where, like, okay, sometimes you pause the show, right? Sometimes that happens because you come to a thing that's
this is an update to the classic, you know, second monitor.
I love how this friggin' watching something on the second screen has become such a fundamental part
just,
of
the community's just grabbed it and it's become a thing forever. But it's been updated now. Like, this is the update. You want them to have to pause sometimes.
It was a philosophy set for a different
because I feel like I've said that 10 years ago about how, like, sometimes you get the spike in difficulty.
It'll
like,
haunt you forever.
You know, like, now you have to do this. But yeah, I guess that turns into pause the video at this point. But yeah. But no, look, if I play this way as well, right? Like, it's not like I'm, you know, like, once you get to a certain point, it's like, you know, obviously you're going to want to, you know, the music, you've heard it lots of times, you know, like, you want to have something else going on. That's fine. But I still think that there needs to be the ability to have, you know, to have something engaging from time to time that you have to deal with. So yeah.
It's always been a bit of a silly thing because you've got so much element of choose your own difficulty in Path of Exile, right? Like,
exactly.
Do harder maps, do easier maps.
But I mean, but look, people always want to choose the hardest stuff, right? So therefore, that's what they're judging it against.
That's true.
And so that's why you do need a level of economic gating to make it so that, like, you know, you can't go too far with difficulty without, you know, without having to prove the economic stuff on some level, so that you can.
Yeah, you're dying and losing the map.
Exactly, you're dying and losing the map. So that we have to think. Like, all that map sustain stuff is so tricky for that reason. Like, getting that exactly right. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like some big advancements in that regards. So I've got some kind of random tail questions here. Are you planning in the future on, I don't think it's probably happening this time around, but on changing campaign pacing at all? Like, I feel like some of the zones are probably a bit too large and a bit too empty.
I mean, that's more about adding more stuff to them than it is about making them smaller.
Yeah.
Like, there's still a lot more events in campaign that we haven't added yet that still need doing. There's like big lists of, you know, things that we never got time to do. So we'll keep on getting to those.
The argument there, which I do believe in, is an area should be able to be large if it has enough interesting things. The frequency of interesting things is high or consistent.
I mean, the size of an area is completely right. Like, imagine there were no load screens. You just walked from place to place. Like, you wouldn't be thinking about area size exactly. It's just, is the density of interest enough? You know, like, the fact that there happens to be a load screen between one place and the other is not really the relevant
long
element.
is directly proportional to interesting.
Yeah, exactly, right? So so to me,
one thing we do need to obviously do, and we have done in some areas, is just making sure that if it is a large area, it's not just interesting things to find as well. It's also making sure there's enough monster variety that way it's not just so repetitive.
Exactly.
Yeah, where you've got like almost different biomes.
There are some where I would say the area is large enough, or you're in there long enough such that there isn't enough monster variance, and so it gets a bit repetitive.
But it's completely true that anytime someone says, "Oh, this area is too large," I'm like, "Well, okay, so what monsters are we changing? What events are we adding? That kind of stuff, right? Because that's the way that you change it around. Like, there are areas that are very large that no one complains about because they're, you know, stuff.
They got
There's also like there are good. I don't know how many, you know, people are gonna play this or how many people stop playing before 011, but, like, you know, it's worth noting again, like, areas have like the fast travel thing now as well to between checkpoints, and you know, there's some of that stuff which I'm hoping, again, when people start playing from scratch, they get to see a lot of the improvements we did before as well, and see how they feel about it again.
Worth mentioning, through campaign, we've got both the wisps and there's also strong boxes as well through campaign. Like, they feel a little bit different. Is, you know, there's just as you play through, you're certainly finding some things you wouldn't have last time.
Couple more
Shrines, yeah.
The what?
Shrines.
Shrines.
Have them actually in the campaign soon.
Yeah.
Cool.
Art wasn't quite done right, or something like that.
Well, it might be a bit weird. The ones in Endgame, it works a little bit better narratively, but using that asset throughout the campaign, it would feel real random. So it's just a matter of, as soon as the art's done, we'll be chucking those in as well.
Oh, great! So that could be after release.
It'll certainly be shortly after.
But also, like, every time we do like, that we're expecting people to play through again, like, we'll probably tweak, like, which content spawns in different areas, and we'll just, like, fiddle around a bit so that then you play it just feels a bit fresh, and you know, things going on there.
Yeah, you kind of got me there. I feel like each of the zones I'm trying to think of that like feel like they're way too big is like they're also just coincidentally empty.
Yes.
So I guess that is maybe perhaps more the issue.
It's the exact same problem happens in maps, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we talked about that. Like the boring empty map.
Yeah. When people say the map's too big, just not.
I think I phrased it to Jonathan yesterday when we were talking about it as every screen looks the same as every other screen. It wouldn't matter where I'm standing in the map. It would look.
I think the map you were talking about was step. Like we were looking at step and being like, okay, well, what's actually like?
It's a big square.
Yeah. And there's nothing going on in it. And even if there was stuff going on, I mean, like it's funny because like it took us a little while to even come to an understanding of like what needed to change there. Because I'm sort of saying like, okay, well, like and this is very random. So it's like, do you find the cold plains in D2 as to be a boring area because it's ultimately kind of similar? But the answer is, well, there's buildings sometimes, and you get like, there's just like there's just a little more going on in that way. So like we need to make sure that maps feel that way too when we're doing them.
There has been a few pervasive crashes and issues like that.
Oh god, yes. Well, I'll tell you what, the entire engine team have basically been entirely focused on that for 3 months, and it's been horrible because so I mean. It's kind of a long story, and I don't know if I should go into all of it, but ultimately, the issue is that on NVIDIA cards, the remaining issue at least, is that on NVIDIA cards, if you're using a driver that's bigger than, I think, 560 point something, like basically after that point, the game crashes, and if you install an older driver than that, it doesn't. If the crash happens in the driver, in the GPU, NVIDIA is just like not really much help, and so it's like just trying to nail down what even caused it. It's just so hard when it's like, and the thing that sucks about it is like it won't reproduce on anywhere except production and alpha, and like the moment you look at it, like we can't reproduce it anymore, and yet for some people it happens all the time, and it's just like it's so horrible. And like what we've done, we actually come up with a somewhat ridiculous idea that was now implementing, which we're going into 020 with, by the way, which is that, and this will seem stupid, but like, how about we just don't crash? Which
you tell me about this.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is, what we're now changing it to is that if the GPU driver crashes, what we do is we create a new device and then upload all the textures to that. The game is paused while this is happening, and then it unpauses, and then the game keeps going. And so that is what we're doing to solve this crash. And it's like it's kind of ridiculous that this has to be the solution, because like it's just mysteriously in the NVIDIA driver we have and we have tried to find a workaround for this. It is just like so difficult. So that in 020 that's what will happen. And so
while we're here, like, do the players have a workaround? Like.
Well, you can install the driver earlier than.
Sure. What about the Vulkan? Does that matter?
Yes. But no, not entirely. It does still happen in Vulkan, but it's a bit unclear about that particular thing, about whether or not that's less. But
I figured it might be.
It is in the driver, but I mean, like if you install an older driver, it will go away.
So all of this time, when people have been saying the classic armchair developer meme, it was like, why don't you just add a bit of code that says if crash equals false?
Yeah, well, something like that.
Works.
Basically do the engineering to allow us to just recreate the entire GPU context, and then there you go, and then don't crash, and that is actually the solution we're now going with. But it's like the thing is, the other one that sucked though was that stupid damn full system freeze, because I'll tell you what, if the entire system freezes, there is just nothing you can do to find out what the hell caused it, because there's no crash report, there's no logging, there's literally nothing, right? And it's like that happened that happened when the Windows November H2 update shipped, and then things just started mysteriously freezing. And my God, that was hard to track down. And you ask Microsoft about it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll look into it." And it's like nothing happens. It's like, Jesus Christ, guys! It's so annoying.
I can feel your frustration.
Yes,
is palpable.
It's incredibly frustrating, because it's like we want nothing better than to fix this shit. So that one was fixed. There was some spinlock implementation that I don't have any understanding of why it causes this to happen, but we tweaked it a bit, and now it doesn't happen anymore. And it's like there's no rational reason why this should cause the operating system to freeze. And it's like there's not even a good answer at the end. There's not even here's what was wrong. It's just like this random particular sequence of operations being done causes your entire system to freeze for no reason after this Windows update. And it's like, well, cool, you know, like what do you do about that? Like it's just terrible. And so yeah, that one sucked. But basically now, I mean, it's funny because we've fixed so many crashes that weren't the crash. So like general stability, apart from that crash, is incredibly good now.
99% down, maybe probably 99.99%.
And it's like, well, the thing is, we'll fix a crash and we'll be like, oh, maybe this is the crash, and then it fixes like 2% of crashes, and you're like, well, that wasn't the crash, but at least it looks good to fix, right? Like, you know, it's so annoying. But as I said, we have a workaround now.
That's good.
That will basically recreate the graphics device if
so you might get a pause, and then
you'll get a pause for 3 seconds, and then you know, like roughly depending on hardware, and then it will continue, and the game will pause at the.
Yeah, you know, I obviously just make it clear we don't want it to remain like that. Obviously,
yes. Obviously, we'll still try and fix it, but at least it means you're not crashing. And you're certainly not freezing anymore. That's sorted out. And then, you know, we found another one recently, which was like, okay, so this is another stupid one, right? Like, so anyway, so there's that whole like Intel CPU issue, like on 13th and 14th generation Intel CPUs, where like there's some freaking voltage regulation problem that causes CPUs to break in a certain way. And if that happens, then like the thing that will break is that like the decompressor will like it'll decompress something and like one bit of it will be wrong. Like literally one bit in there, and then it fails like a hash check, and then that just causes the game to crash. And so the fix, like, you know, it's like things like that will happen as well. Like you've got stuff like that, and it's like, well, once again, it's like it is our problem. We have to fix it because it's affecting real users. But like the solution to stuff like that, is just so annoying to find. And you know, so yeah. Anyway.
It sounds like you've improved a lot of the unrelated crashes, and you've come up with a good workaround at least.
At least hopefully. But
so that sounds like a massive improvement. But I also just think your obvious frustration is very validating for people who have been frustrated with this.
Exactly. But the thing that's the most annoying about it is that like all these the engine team who are spending time fixing this, they're not able to spend time working on performance issues, which, you know, is something else that we need to be obviously improving over time. So you know, there's been a few performance improvements, but like not nearly the number we would have had if we had all, you know, 7 of those people
tied up with
like working on performance improvements. So you know, that's been the most frustrating thing about it.
Crashes first.
100%. But it's like when they're kind of
we have been chipping away at some decent ones though.
We have.
We got some pretty good performance problems resolved.
Yeah, I mean, there was that ice one that was really bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was things like that. So like the worst offenders we're certainly fixing. But and like I have no doubt by the time we get you know, like each time we do a new release, it'll be even better.
Yep.
Great. But you know, and by the time we get a full release, I'm sure it'll be like very good.
And I mean, speaking of, I know it's like tangential sort of as well. Obviously, we had a lot of woes around the release, but we've done a whole lot of back-end engineering work to make it.
Yes.
You know,
yes. So the launch should go smoother as far as like you know.
I mean, it was pretty good.
Stuff. It was.
Wow, it still was 5 hours of not good.
Yeah, but like 5 hours compared to
no. This time,
days,
I mean, look, I'm
standard.
I'm tempting fate here, but like we've made significant improvements to the ability for the realm to handle stuff. So
5 minutes this time.
Well, I mean, we'll see, right? You never know what's going to go wrong. But
sometimes
it should be
get caught out by something random.
It should be much better this time.
And I hope you get enough players to stress your theory. That's always a good thing to aim for. We'll just run up with a couple of the random kind of chat questions before we finish up today. Any possibility of Ascendancy respecs? Is that something you've considered, especially with all the changes going on?
We're sort of not in love with it. Like, it's just one of those things where like I feel like it's key to the identity of the character, and like respecing like the journey of the character, like it does get pretty significantly compromised if you allow for that. But I know Mark is especially strongly feeling about it.
I mean, the answer is going to be the exact same as last time, which is like, I don't know exactly, or I don't know how to articulate exactly why I feel so strongly about this, and so do a lot of the team members. Of like, again, it's just that your choices should matter, and you know, it's obviously something that I was okay with in PoE 1, and so there is probably a world where I will be okay, but there's got to be some level of work involved to achieve it that isn't to just pay a little bit of gold and then you're done or whatever. Like, I want to find a way to do it if we're going to do it in a way that is like grounded
and interesting idea.
And difficult to do. Well, not, I wouldn't say difficult, but like requires some actual work to do. So that would be the compromise I'd certainly be willing to explore, which I have been thinking about recently because I know every single time we come to an expansion, it's going to come up. So
the trial of respect switching or something.
Yeah, there'll be something where your character has to undergo some sort of challenge or something to do it. And I know you could argue, well, doing the trial is that, and you're not entirely wrong, but something a bit more.
Sacrifice a few few
sure,
thousand enemies.
I'm sure we'll have a conclusive decision, or at least a level of articulation one way or the other by the end of early access.
Right.
But for now,
I'll ask you then.
Yeah, it's just going to take me a bit more time to figure out what I want to do there.
Is dynamic switching between keyboard and mouse and controller coming at all?
It's not in 0.20, but it will be coming.
It's on its way.
Yes, so and I'm really hoping by 0.30, we should be able to get that. That is a very key feature.
It seems like it's going to be hard to loot juiced maps with only one portal. Oh no, well, this question has already been answered. Well, actually no, because there's still one portal.
This is a concern. We have to do something about it.
We have to figure it out.
My bad, So in the next week, we will actually be looking into this one.
There's a few problems around it. Still, there are other things to come up. Like, you also don't want it to be that if you did use your one portal, because it's your portal that's used, not everyone's portal that's used, because when it says
that's actually a good
portal,
point. Yeah, it's a
that's
good point.
One portal for up to 6 players.
Yeah.
And so when it's 6 portals, it's 6 portals for up to 6 players, which means technically it's 36 entries and exits out of the map, right? And like that changes things in a way where it's like when it's down to 1, it's like you don't want it to be that, oh, I failed the map. Quick, Ziggy, come join my party, get in here and finish it for me. You don't want to kind of have that style of play happening. So there are still some things we need to figure out with this, because it's going to promote some what I would probably classify as degenerate behavior, as well as the fact that you're probably like, oh, my inventory's full, zone out. Oh, what the? Okay, sweet. And sure, you can add a warning, but I don't know if even restricting it to just one inventory of loot like that is good, right? I would personally prefer that it's one death, not one entry. So there's some stuff we need to figure out, but again, Jonathan and I need to talk about that and actually solve that. So
that's interesting, because the death seems like the important part. So as long as there's not like a way to cheat it, it seems like almost like you'd want to allow people to come and go as they please until they die, right?
Yep, which is a potential solution. But again, can't say for sure. But 100%, that person is right for bringing that up, and it is on our radar for this coming week to have, or weekend as well, to have a solution for.
Yeah. So with this new league not having a specific league mechanic, is it still a challenge league? Does it still have challenges?
It's actually
no. I didn't. There's no achievements or challenges yet.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we weren't going to do that for a little bit yet.
There's not really. Maybe later in early access, but for now, not really. We're just trying to keep it more about the game and the mechanics, and less about
make the game first.
The achievements, and the achievements will certainly, an achievement system and stuff like that will certainly be there with the full release, and we'll reintegrate all of that at the time.
Is there any plans for stash tab expansions, like for example rune storage?
Oh, 100%. Right now I'm actually trying to at least add the affinity without adding a custom tab. Those two things appeared from the implementation standpoint, so I want to try and divorce them so we can have affinities without it.
We wanted to get those in this patch, but unfortunately they just didn't quite make it. I mean, it's actually quite likely to come in sometime, like in a point release after, like within the 0.20.
As soon as the patch is out and stable and we're on top of things, it's going to be like, all right, we need to get all those like UX or quality of life things that we blatantly missed out on.
I think
for example, like being able to add bookmarks to your atlas and write the name.
That is one that
something
we designed some stuff for it. We just haven't got it yet.
Cool. I want to say it's like 80% implemented right now.
So it'll be soon as we can. We'll get that in there.
All right, that is excellent. And on that note, we'll wrap things up today. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Mark.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank everyone for watching.
Thanks for having me here. Great time. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
See you.